738-192 and E-petition 732-559 relating to the sale of fireworks. And it is a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Mr Pritchard, and it is a privilege to introduce these two petitions on behalf of the Petitions Committee today. Let me also say that this is not the first time that we have been here. In December 2024, I was asked by the Petitions Committee to lead a very similar debate on fireworks after more than 120,000 people signed two similar petitions previously for change. And since then, I have met with the campaigners and organisers, including the Royal Society for the Prevention of Accidents, Anxiety UK, Help for Heroes, the British Horse Society, and so many more, Mr Pritchard. And what is absolutely clear is that public support for change is overwhelming. In this place, members of Parliament from across political spectrum, across the political divide, support calls for change. And yet here we are again, Mr Pritchard, debating this important issue. And that should be a message clear and loud to government ministers to act right now. Mr Pritchard, today's petitions have received over 133,000 signatures and 193,000 signatures respectively, well over 376,000 signatures together. Indeed, I know, having spoken to both of the lead petitioners, Helen and Graham, who are in the public gallery right now today, who have created these two petitions, their deep love for animals and the reasons why they have brought forward the petitions that they have. Because it is undeniable that inappropriate use of fireworks can have a devastating impact on domestic pets, farm animals and the like, and I will give way.
I'm grateful for the honourable member giving way. I just want to thank my constituent Robert Branch, who was one of the people responsible for starting these petitions. I met Robert last week. As a fellow dog owner, I know just how important in High Peak these issues are to local people.
Yeah, and Mr Pritchard, I'd like to thank not only Robert Branch, but I'm sure all of us as members of Parliament have received numerous bits of correspondence coming in from our constituents, deeply concerned that much tougher action must take place now on fireworks. And in Riddlesden, in my own constituency, just before Christmas, fireworks have also had dramatic impacts. And before I talk about that story, I'll give way to the honourable member.
I thank the honourable member for giving way. Absolutely, in my constituency of Halesowen, many people have written to me about the impact of fireworks on dogs. Two people in particular, Marianne and Rosaline, wrote about how excessive fireworks around fireworks night cause their dogs to tremble uncontrollably and run desperately away from their owners. Does he share my concern about the impact on animals, and does he agree with the petitioners that the government must do more in order to regulate and control the amount of fireworks through the year?
I absolutely agree with the honourable member.
Forgive me.
Sorry.
There are some points standing. It's only convention that you sit on a particular way. Perhaps there'll be a cross-party loving today. I don't know. We started to see it here. So if members do want to join the other side of the chamber where there are seats, they are able to do so. But I will recognise their individual parties, so don't panic. Robbie Moore.
For a moment there, I thought there was some defections coming across to the Conservative Party, but we can live in hope. We can live in hope.
Where's the reform
in
section?
Riddlesden, in my constituency, just before Christmas, fireworks also led to the tragic death of a family's foal known as King. And I know we can't use images in this debate, Mr Pritchard, but I do have an image on my desk of King. Terrified by fireworks, it is believed King bolted in the night, and he was found by a local farmer, Hannah, the next morning impaled onto a piece of farm machinery. We had to lift the machinery off him and drag him out, but he sadly died from his injuries, Hannah said. It was just awful and something out of a horror film. So let this be a message to anyone who still says that fireworks are merely a matter of harmless fun. They are not, and I will give way.
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend. He's making a very powerful statement about the impact on animals. Can I thank the petitioners in Epping Forest who have signed this, including the Red Wings horse charity that actually triggered the debate, and they have the Ada Cole stables in my constituency. As a veterinary surgeon, I have seen sadly firsthand the impact on small animals going missing and injuries, but farm animal, livestock and horses, horrific injuries. Does my honourable friend agree with me that something has has to be done to keep both people and animals safe from fireworks.
And my honourable friend makes an excellent point, because it is absolutely about the negative impact on animal welfare, our animals, our pets, our farmed animals, as well as the human impacts, which I'll come on to in my speech. And I think there's an intervention there which I'll take.
Thank the honourable member for giving way. Just to reiterate what my honourable friend just said, as veterinary surgeons, every single vet will have stitched up horses or treated dogs and cats that have been affected by this. This isn't a niche problem. It's not unusual. It happens. Everyone dreads being on call on fireworks night because they know they will be busy.
And Mr Pritchard, I absolutely agree with my honourable friend, who I know is a vet and has expertise in the amount of dealings that he has had to do in a previous life before entering this place. And I will give way, and then I'll make a little progress.
I'm grateful. Can I pay tribute to my constituent, Julie McMillan, who emails me every year, the 19 years that I've either been a member of this place or a member of the Scottish Parliament, and many other people raising concerns about fireworks. But can I just urge caution in terms of what has happened in Scotland, because the Scottish Government introduced a new licensing regime which does not work, and they've had to pause the whole system. So my message to the Minister is, while we do need greater control and we also need greater consistency across the UK, please, please, please don't follow what the SNP Scottish Government have done.
And my honourable friend makes an excellent point, because actually I would argue that there needs to be a approach which is taken across the whole of the United Kingdom on this issue, and therefore I'd urge the government to work with those devolved administrations and devolved governments to make sure that there is a strategy that works, and we can take those lessons from north of the border. We know that the death of any animal is upsetting, particularly family pets, and growing up on a farm, I know all too well this is an impact for those farmed animals as well. It is easy to forget that many animals are for more than just being a pet, but they are sensitive, and much more sensitive to sound than what humans are. And that we know that they hear noise much louder than humans, and it can be deafening. I'll give way over there, and then I'll come to the honourable member.
For bringing this debate, I've been contacted by over 100 constituents of mine who raised concerns about animals, but I've also been contacted by a constituent who's raised concerns about the impact on her mental health. So I would like to check with the honourable member if he agrees with me. Whilst a lot of people use fireworks responsibly, whilst there's concerns about impacts on animals, there are concerns about the impact on people with their mental health and well-being.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's I'm going to come on to in my speech and talk about the negative implications on veterans and those with anxiety-related issues. And I absolutely agree with the points that the honourable member has made, and I'll take an intervention with
for giving way, and it's clear that there is an issue which every one of us feels that impact, as so many people write to us. Now, on the New Year Eve, a constituent of mine, Kim, reported to me that the fireworks went on in Whalley Range until 4:30 in the morning. The noise was so loud and so persistent that even it actually set off his house alarm. So does the honourable friend agree that the use of fireworks like this and in the middle of the night are clearly an example of antisocial behaviour, and more must be done to tackle it?
Again, I completely agree with the honourable member. In my own constituency across Keighley and Ilkley, we are seeing the anti-social behaviour of use of fireworks throughout the night, throughout the year, early morning hours as well, causing a huge level of disruption to those hard-working individuals that just want to get a good night's sleep and get up in the morning. I'll just make a little bit more progress, and then I will take some more interventions. Having spoken to Helen, who was one of the lead petitioners, the UK largest horse charity, Red Wings Horse Sanctuary, that has already been mentioned by my honourable friend, I know just how urgent these calls are for change. And it's not just animals that suffer from the anti-social use of fireworks. Many veterans can suffer attacks of PTSD from when fireworks are let off, deeply damaging their mental health. For vulnerable children, for vulnerable adults, the fireworks can confuse and intimidate. And there is nothing more frustrating for a working family being kept up throughout the night because of the constant stream of fireworks, and this is something that I'm absolutely seeing in my own constituency of Keighley. I'll give way to the honourable gentleman.
Appreciate the honourable member giving way on that particular point. Brave Derby veterans have contacted me, and particularly those who suffer from mental health or are recovering from PTSD, really concerned that this has a negative effect on their lives. I'm sure the honourable member would agree with me that those brave men and women who have put their lives on the line for our country deserve the support when they need it the most.
And I agree with the honourable member in the points that he's making, because those that have added anxiety-related issues, fireworks are an absolute trigger point when they are let off, and the noise that they create, and then the levels of anxiety that are then heightened as a result of that, needs to be listened to by the Minister. And I hope that the Minister will respond positively in her response from the dispatch box. One more intervention, then I'll give way. Carry on.
I'm very grateful for him giving way. He's been very generous with his time. I've had constituents contact me about this issue. Many of them recognise the importance of fireworks as a great British tradition on fireworks night and other nights such as this. But what they want to see is more regulation around the times of year that fireworks can be enjoyed, the time into the evening that they can be enjoyed, and also the volume of fireworks as well. So we can make sure that people are able to enjoy fireworks on great occasions, but in a responsible way that reflect that there are those with trauma, there are those with pets for whom it's not as enjoyable. Does the honourable member agree that we can get that balance right?
Again, I agree with the honourable member that it is about making sure that not only are we bringing out tougher regulation, tougher enforcement, but making sure that those that use fireworks are using them absolutely appropriately. And it doesn't necessarily need to be about a ban of fireworks. There are much, much tougher measures that can be brought in through licensing, through the decibels associated with fireworks, which I urge the government to be able to look at and not just give a response that is just about we're going to take this away and think about it, because that's the response that we've had far, far too long. I'll just make a little bit more progress and then I'll take some interventions. In my constituency, we get this far too often in places like Riddlesden, Braithwaite, Brackenbank, Oakworth, Haworth, Ingro and Silsden. Just this weekend, I put out a call across the UK to share their experiences, asking people to contact me about their experiences of fireworks. I only put this out, Mr Pritchard, on the train as I was coming down last night, and I received well over 900 responses, which just shows the strength of strength of feeling on this issue. And dare I say, I've received much, much more correspondence on this issue in preparation for the debate. And the stories that I've heard have been horrifying. One resident wrote, I was at a care home caring for an elderly gentleman with Alzheimer's. There is no respite from fireworks from them, and it is so unpredictable. I saw 3 elderly gentlemen walk around the room for hours a day thinking that it was a gas explosion. Some of the residents tried to leave the building and to run away as they didn't feel safe. Some of the residents were crying and distressed. Some sat with their head in their hands. Meal times are disrupted. Every aspect of their life is affected. Chair, I say, enough is enough, and I will give way to the honourable lady.
In my constituency of South Derbyshire, I too have had lots of constituents contact me, whether it's about concern for neurodiverse people, people with mental health issues, veterans with PTSD or animal owners. Helen, my constituent, sent me a video footage of her border collie Alf cowering in fear under a table. I wonder if the honourable member agrees with me that in today's modern age there are lots of beautiful alternatives for displays in the air that don't actually require fireworks, not to say they aren't marvellous at the right time, and actually can be silent, and whether more people should be encouraged to use modern technology to deliver awe-inspiring displays.
Yeah. The honourable member makes an excellent point that there are many other ways of having entertainment in the sky beyond using very loud fireworks, which gets to the nuts of and the detail of what this petition is actually about, looking at the decibel units associated with fireworks that are going off. I will just crack on a little bit more because I've got 2 more pages, but I want to make sure that everyone's got enough time to give their own speeches. It is in a distressing number of cases. Emergency services are also targeted, particularly in Keighley, that come under attack by those with antisocial behaviour, with fireworks being used as weapons. Yet, unlike the illegal use of knives, fireworks don't seem to get the attention and get a free pass. Chair, it is time that the time for talk is over, and we need action now. Both of today's petitions provide sensible ideas that would dramatically improve the situation for communities facing inappropriate firework use. 2 more interventions, and I'll give, and then.
Sanctuary as well, which is headquartered in Norfolk, and indeed Norwich North was among the top 5 signatories of the petition. Does he agree, and as Red Wings has pointed out, that the Animal Welfare Act actually doesn't provide sufficient protections, which is why we need to look at measures such as reducing the decibel level to ensure that the protection is there for both animals and people?
And I do think there's an opportunity, actually, following on from the Honourable Member, about the animal welfare strategy that has been announced by the government over the Christmas period, and that I feel that it doesn't go far enough in detailing some of the offering that could be put in place specifically to deal with fireworks in what the government could look to do over the rest of this Parliament in terms of addressing animal welfare. I will give way to the Honourable Gentleman that has been trying to...
I thank the Honourable Gentleman for giving way. It is quite difficult for, sitting on this side of the room to listen to the member talking about what could and should be done now, when there were 14 years where a lot of this stuff could have been done and wasn't done. However, my point is this. He's talked about domestic animals, he's talked about farm animals, he's talked about veterans, and he's talked about the elderly. There's one element that is not considered and needs to be considered, and that is the impact on wild animals. And we don't really, it's often the, does he agree with me that this is a perhaps unseen impact of these very, very loud fireworks on our wildlife?
Yeah, the Honourable Member makes a very good point, actually, because a lot of it is about data collection. And even from those animals that are pets or animals that are associated with the farm animals or whatever, it's very easy to collect data and give that and demonstrate where the impact is had. Less so, and almost impossible, I dare I say, with wild animals. And I know that even the data collection associated with pets and kept animals is far and few between, and therefore it's less easy to demonstrate to the government that action needs to be taken. But I do urge the Minister to take on board the impact on all animals as a result of fireworks being let off. Because the current legal limit for loudness of fireworks is 120 decibels. That's the equivalent to a rock concert or standing next to a police siren. By contrast, 90 decibels, whilst still not quiet, is equivalent to a busy restaurant or a hairdryer. This is completely reasonable suggestion to reduce noise levels to more considerate levels, but indeed 85 decibels is the threshold in which humans experience hearing damage. Reducing noise would mean private displays could continue with a reduced risk of distressing animals or inconveniencing neighbours. And on that point, I will give way to the Honourable Member.
I thank the Honourable Gentleman for giving way, and in my constituency I've had over 300 people contact me about this issue, 100 just this year, and I've been there of the trauma of my dog being traumatised herself over fireworks. But there's another issue too. I believe that what the Honourable Gentleman is saying about reducing the decibel limit is a right way to go, but there's also the issue of safety, and I witnessed the house opposite mine set alight on New Year's Eve as a result of a close proximity firework, those people being made homeless for a period of time. So does he agree with me that we should also be looking at maybe restricting fireworks to public displays as opposed to in private residence?
Mr. Richard, that nicely brings me on to the next petition, because another option is requiring local council approval to hold firework displays. This would, of course, allow the council to control the number and timing of firework displays, ensuring that there are more considerate for the whole community. In addition, I think it is safe to assume that no council would approve a display that was deemed unsafe, and therefore hopefully requiring a permit would reduce the number of firework-related injuries. There is, however, one further observation I would like to make in addition to the two solutions that have been proposed by the two petitions today. I will give way. Yeah.
Can I thank him very much for the great speech he's making, for giving way, and the excellent way he's dealing with all the interventions. As someone who lives with a cat, and I hesitate to say own because it usually seems it's the other way around, I can see for myself and from the emails I've had from Dartford residents concerned about their pets that the disturbance caused by loud fireworks is hugely traumatising for them. Would the Honourable Member agree with me that not only, as he already said, we need to reduce the maximum noise level for consumer fireworks, but we also need to seek further restrictions on the dates when they can be purchased from both licensed and unlicensed sellers?
I absolutely do agree with the honourable member, because it is about tougher licensing as well, and it cannot be right, and I've seen this in my own constituency of Keighley, when sale of fireworks take place and they take place in pop-up shops, that there is no regulation associated with some of those pop-up shops that take place. And those pop-up shops could be below residential flats or units, and therefore exposing an absolute risk to life, potentially, if there is a hazard associated with that environment. So I do take on board, and I do think that these are the options that the Minister should explore. Because the biggest problem with fireworks is enforcement. Until a firework is lit illegally, no crime has been committed. And by the time the police spot and respond to a firework in the sky, those responsible have had plenty of time to flee the scene or to dispose of what little evidence there is to begin with. Put simply, it is incredibly difficult to ensure laws that regulate fire use, and therefore it is quite right that today's petitions and wider reforms which focus on wider supply regulations, even if permits were required by individuals as opposed to on event-by-event basis, this added hurdle to purchase fireworks would deter a larger number of people simply looking for a cheap thrill. And I will give way to the honourable member.
I thank the honourable member for giving way. He has been really generous with his time. On the last point that he has made, there has been no new legislation to deal with antisocial firework use for over 2 decades. And I've had 557 of my constituents signing these petitions. Since being elected, I've had to deal with 150 separate cases in my constituency of Wolverhampton West, where they've raised a number of issues. Fireworks going off at midnight, at 6 o'clock in the morning. Does the honourable member agree that, as a start, the least that this government can do is to do what the first petition has asked for, and that is to reduce the maximum noise levels from 120 to 90 decibels? Decreasing the volume, the sound of the fireworks, will be at least one step forward to take now.
If any action appears from the government after today's debate, after having spoken on this issue for the last 6 years, then I will welcome any action that comes forward. But what I absolutely would want to see is both of the recommendations that have been put forward by these 2 petitions today, that's been signed by over 376,000 people, to be listened to, acted upon and enforced. A final intervention, and then we go.
Given way, he's been extraordinarily generous with us all in the interventions in this debate. But on the particular point that he is making, a mother in my constituency in Leighton and Wanstead was chased down the high street by some children firing fireworks at her and her own kids. That meant that her children spent the evening cowering under a table, suffering trauma, and none of them were able to identify those perpetrators of what clearly is a crime. Now, whilst this is a police matter, would my honourable friend agree with me that these strongest restrictions are necessary to deal with such situations where it's difficult for those to identify the perpetrators of firework crime?
I do agree with the honourable member. And enforcement, whilst it is challenging, those that are carrying out enforcement can be helped by tougher legislation coming in on this. We know we need to learn the lessons from north of the border up in Scotland, from the SNP government in what they've rolled out. But there have been recommendations upon recommendations put forward to the government of all colours over a period of time. And I just hope that now we will hopefully see some action by the Minister. So, Chair, I say again, enough is enough. Public support for national change on fireworks is overwhelming. They disturb the peace of entire neighbourhoods, terrify pets, and leave vulnerable people trapped in their own homes throughout the year. If we choose to continue to ignore this issue, then I fear the inevitable. There will be more unnecessary deaths, injuries, traumas for victims of fireworks in the future. In the face of such concern, there must be action, and that cannot occur until we have had the full weight of government behind us. And therefore, the government has the power to end this nightmare for all, and they should do so without delay. And on that point, can I thank members for giving me a little bit of time to take as many interventions as possible, and let's have a good debate.
Thank you very much indeed. I remind members that if they do wish to speak, if they could bob, I think that is happening right now, so thank you for that. Before I put the question, just say, given the members can be seated, thank you. Before I put the question, given the popularity and the importance of this debate, We will put an informal limit of 4.5 minutes. Members go 4.5 or give up some of their time if they wish. So the question is that this House has considered E-petition 738192 and 732559 relating to the sale of fireworks. Lizzie Collinge.
Thank you, Mr Pritchard. It's a pleasure to serve here today under your chairship, and I'd like to thank the member for Keighley and Ilkley for presenting this debate on behalf of the Petitions Committee. My constituents in Morecambe and Lunesdale were 4th on the list for signatures for these petitions, which call for controls on the levels of decibels of fireworks and controls on the sales of fireworks. Constituents like Stephen, who told me that his previous guide dog was so frightened by fireworks that Stephen was dragged across a main road in the dog's desperate attempt to get away from the noise. And Natalie, who works closely with veterans, spoke about the serious impact fireworks can have on mental health. With some people, I'll have a give way.
Giving way. Hundreds of people in Epsom you'll have signed this petition and emailed in their concerns. And as an ex-service member myself, I absolutely understand how triggering loud noises can be really problematic for individuals with PTSD and mental health problems. Indeed, myself, after coming back from Optelic 4 in Iraq, I found myself prone position in Lewisham High Street after fireworks were being set off, and it felt like we were under attack. But many constituents have also emailed in saying how concerned they are about the impact on animals, in particular loud bangs. So does my honourable friend agree with me that the government must review the maximum noise limit for fireworks and give a clear timeline to do so?
I thank the Honourable Lady for her intervention, and I absolutely agree that the government should be looking at limits on decibel levels of fireworks and other measures. As the Honourable Lady sets out, the impact on veterans can be very severe. And what I was struck by, Mr Pritchard, was that even for the people who are worst affected, they weren't looking to ban fireworks. They understood that this is an enjoyable activity for many people. They just wanted some common sense around how they were used. And one sensible place to start is with the limits on decibels. It's entirely possible to have a lovely display, just slightly quieter. But on the suggestion of the second petition to restrict fireworks to council-approved events only, I confess I am more conflicted. I understand the reasoning, of course I do, but I also recognise that private celebrations bring a great deal of joy. And so I'm not convinced that removing that entirely is the right way forward. But instead, what I would be more inclined to support is a proposal that I have raised here before, and that is to limit firework displays to a certain number of days a year. Aligned with key celebrations, and this has been supported by many comments from my constituents, because as we know at the moment, bonfire night feels like it stretches from mid-October all the way through to November. So during the same month that we celebrate remembrance, our veterans are being put under avoidable stress by constant, unpredictable explosions.
My honourable friend, please give way.
I'll happily give way.
My honourable friend for giving way. As she has mentioned, I have spent many years celebrating the fireworks in my garden, and I've had the pleasure of having firework displays with my children in the garden as well. But does my honourable friend agree that things have now gone a bit too far, in that we are seeing fireworks throughout the year? There are, of course, events, celebrations like Diwali, Bonfire Night, when you would expect fireworks to go off, and New Year's Day, but they are happening throughout the year at all times of the day. And so does she agree that it is time to limit the period during which fireworks can actually be used?
I thank the Honourable Friend for his intervention, and I absolutely agree, because time and time and again, people have told me that it's the unexpected nature of fireworks that causes the most harm. Just giving people the opportunity to plan and prepare for the fireworks would be an enormous step forward. And we can achieve this, I believe, by introducing set days for fireworks displays. For example, on Bonfire Night and the nearest Saturday, replicating this across the year for important events such as New Year's Eve, Diwali, etc. I'll happily give way.
For giving way. It is incredibly important, and I'm so glad that we're having this debate, because my constituents have contacted me about how concerned they are about this issue around decibels, and I think that the proposal that she is making, that actually we limit this to a certain number of days a year that everybody can plan around, and also that we consider whether or not silent fireworks is the way to go or simply reducing decibels, is very important. So I'm glad that she has raised this as part of her speech today.
I thank my honourable friend for her intervention. I have to confess, I love fireworks. I absolutely adore fireworks, and I do want people to be able to experience that joy, but not at the cost of other people's safety and security. Happily give way.
I was just wondering if my honourable friend prefers the whoosh as they go up to the bang, because I think that's what most people are there for. And furthermore, my constituents get in touch with me to say that when they do complain, they feel like they're passed from pillar to post, so between the council and the police. And does my honourable friend agree that it needs to be easier and more simple for my constituents to know who to make that complaint to?
I thank the honourable lady for her intervention. I absolutely agree that for any issue, fireworks or otherwise, it's really clear that people need a clear way to know who is responsible and who they can go to. And unfortunately, too many of our constituents, in whatever the situation is, get passed between different organisations, and that's unfair. So I think that just by putting some sensible regulations on noise levels and imposing a bit of predictability, it's entirely possible that we can allow people to enjoy fireworks as the spectacular displays that they are, whilst protecting people and pets from the worst effects. I'd also like to mention, of course, working animals here. I have a partly agricultural constituency, and we have a huge amount of working animals and farm animals. And I'll give away.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. I've had over 450 people sign that petition. I'm so thankful for the people of Doncaster, East and Axholme that have done that. In the 100 emails I've got, though, there is a lot of talk about livestock in particular. So this is not just about safety, this is about the impact of losing our animals on our farms, in our trading organisations as well. And will she agree with me that actually when the Minister considers the case here, she considers the business case in terms of the impact on small, medium enterprise, as well as the safety and the welfare case too?
Yeah.
Thank my honourable friend for his intervention. I absolutely agree that the impacts on all groups must be considered, including on businesses. And finally, Mr Pritchard, as time moves on, I also hope more organised displays used moving drones, which are quiet and are also absolutely spectacular. Thank you.
Before I call Gagan Mahendra, can I just say that TV screen, that screen is not showing the time, but behind me and there, so colleagues, members will be conscious of others when speaking. Gagan Mahendra.
Thank you, Mr. Pritchard. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. I congratulate my honourable friend, Member for Keighley and Ilkley, on securing this really important debate, and I thank the many petitioners who have brought this issue before Parliament. It's nearly a year since the member for Luton North actually brought this issue up in the chamber, and it's refreshing to see the Minister at the time also here showing his continued passion for this particular topic. I wish to reflect the strength of feeling among my constituents in South West Hertfordshire that the balance between enjoyment and disruption caused by fireworks is not being struck and is in fact causing harm. In the autumn and winter of 2025 alone, and continuing to this year, over 200 of my constituents have contacted me directly to raise their concerns about the impacts of fireworks in our area. These concerns focus on the serious distress caused to pets, livestock and other animals, as well as the effect of loud and unpredictable fireworks on people with mental health issues, including PTSD and heightened sensitivity to noise. My constituents are not calling for an outright ban. Instead, there's overwhelming support for alternatives such as quiet or low-level noise fireworks, which preserve visual enjoyment while significantly reducing harm. Others have already mentioned the replacement potential of drones as well. In South West Hertfordshire, 383 constituents have signed petitions calling for the maximum noise level of fireworks to be reduced from 120 to 90 decibels. A further 293 constituents have supported limiting the sale of fireworks to councils or licensed events. My only word of warning about the licensed events is making sure that social media posts on Facebook groups do actually ensure that those displays happen. I'm conscious that over the new year and in the run-up, things like fireworks nights, there were some fake posts suggesting firework displays were going to happen, and a lot of people were disappointed. I think that happened in the Midlands rather than my own constituency. Given the development and increasing availability of quiet fireworks, it's right to reassess the current balance between celebration and protection, including low and legal noise limit from 120 decibels. I know others have mentioned about significant religious events. I'm conscious that I represent quite a multicultural community, and sometimes things like weddings or family celebrations will mean that there'll be firework celebrations outside of the normal cycle. But if we can actually mitigate the noise instead that would mean that no one loses out on the enjoyment of marking significant milestones in their lives without scaring the animals and those vulnerable people of our communities. Of course I will.
Honourable gentleman give way. Like so many of us, my constituents have written to me about this, and I just wanted to talk about Jessica, who wrote to describe that the impact that fireworks had on her father reduced him to a near panic attack. She also has a friend who served multiple tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, and a dog who is reduced to panting and drooling to the point where she fears he's going to have a heart attack. At the weekend, the owner of Eden Valley Pet Food spoke to me because the impact of fireworks on one of his dogs, a gun dog, leaves him very, very traumatised. Does the honourable gentleman agree that this isn't about backing a ban or banning the bang? It's about achieving a solution that balances enjoyment with mitigating the trauma that so many people and animals experience.
Thank you very much. The honourable member is 100% correct. None of us are looking to be killjoys. What we are trying to do is balance the requirements of all aspects of our community, so that those members that wish to enjoy the lights and noise associated with fireworks are not doing so to the detriment of others and vulnerable humans as well as animals. In conclusion, the government must consider whether additional measures and encouragement, such as reducing the legal noise limit, should encourage the use of fireworks in a way that would help strike a better balance between celebration, animal welfare and community well-being. And I've already mentioned the use of drones and whether that could be potentially more widespread to ensure that people can continue to celebrate without negatively affecting other aspects of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pritchard, and it's a pleasure to see you in the chair. And it's also a pleasure to follow my honourable friend from South West Hertfordshire, and he is a committed campaigner on this issue. Here we are again, though, another fireworks petition, another debate, and unfortunately another year without meaningful change on this really important issue of fireworks laws. I said last year that we'd have to have this debate every year, and I know the Minister will listen, and I hope that we won't all be here again next year in 2027. I want to thank the campaigners, all the petitioners, because we are going to continue banging on about this, and particularly the Fireworks Alliance of all the charities, a cross-sector of charities, from veterans to vets to pets to animals to children, all of which want to see change in the law. And fireworks laws are not fit for purpose. You can see a cross-party consensus on this. That was true in 2022 when I tabled my first bill on enforcement of fireworks. And it is just as true in 2024 when I tabled my bill on licensing of fireworks. We know that this has been a really hard year for many people, and the misery of fireworks has added to this. This August to December period was possibly one of the worst I could ever remember, with families being kept up all hours by huge loud displays. Fireworks being aggressively marketed on TikTok, not as family-friendly events, but as weapons and instruments of antisocial behaviour. And now the impact on this is huge. We have impacts on animals, whether that's wildlife or pets, or in the rural and the countryside. We have mental health issues. I have PTSD. I have constituent. It's not just veterans that serve in war zones. It is also those that work in charities and humanitarian organisations, which have contacted me to say that they have been traumatised by fireworks. But also I will in a second, but also children. When I visit schools, particularly primary schools, I ask them how many of them are kept up each night because of fireworks. Every single hand goes up. And if it's not them being woken up, they're woken up by their pet, being absolutely terrified. And this has a really bad impact, particularly on children with special educational needs. I will give way.
She's making a very powerful speech about the need for change in the law, but also the impact not just on humans but on animals. One of my constituents got in touch with me from Bolton West to talk about the massive detrimental impact that irresponsible launching of fireworks had on the weekend of bonfire night. She talked about the impact on her horses, who the day after were spinning around in their stables, sweating profusely, displaying flame and responses and wind sucking on doors. And when she spoke to Greater Manchester Police, they essentially said in writing that the lack of legislation meant that they couldn't act. And it was obvious from speaking, to quote my constituent, to so many different professionals that all they could really say was that their hands were tied. And it's really clear to me, and from the contributions that we've heard today, that it's imperative on the government to change the law to protect individuals and to protect the animals that are so detrimentally impacted by these fireworks.
Honourable friend for sharing that horrific example. It's an example we would have heard time and time again across the country, and we hear it throughout the year, but particularly during bonfire nights, during those seasons where fireworks are most prevalent. And there is a perverse loophole in our law which my private member's bill wants to change, which is to tighten the loophole which allows unlicensed sellers during the busiest times for fireworks to actually go and sell them. In Luton, we had somebody marketing during this period where unlicensed sellers could sell fireworks, and he was marketing online with a balaclava on his face. This was to cause damage, not to cause happiness and joy. Absolutely, we need to close this loophole, and we need to lower the decibel limits to 90 decibels. This is not just popular. A third of Brits want to see this happen, but it's also necessary. Necessary for animals, necessary for people with PTSD, veterans and those who have sustained burn injuries as a result of fireworks. A change in the law cannot come soon enough. We've seen a change in the law in the Netherlands, and where we have seen that, we have seen the injuries and serious burns incidents go down considerably. So I just want to conclude by saying, my fireworks bill is still on the books, Minister. Though it's not likely to get another reading, I suggest that the Minister, it's a really good place to start, and I am willing to work with anybody to see this progress, because when it looks at our fireworks laws, I know that everybody is on side to be able to see change, positive change, not just for ourselves, but for our communities, for our animals, and for residents that have frankly had enough. Thank you.
Iqbal Mohammed, then I'm going to call Alison Hume.
Thank you, Mr. Pritchard. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship, and I thank my honourable friend from Yorkshire for introducing this really important debate. I stand here today to speak in support of both the petitions presented before us, both of which have attracted significant backing in my own constituency of Dewsbury and Batley. Over 200 constituents have signed the petition calling for a reduction in the maximum noise level of fireworks, and over 230 have signed a petition seeking to limit their sale to local authority-approved events. Those numbers and the popularity of this debate reflect a genuine and deeply felt concern about the troubling effects that fireworks can have in our communities. I've also had over 100 individual emails since I was elected in July 2024, and Paula, one of my constituents, wrote to me and said they are a constant, nearly every night, getting louder and are being let off at all hours. They're not only antisocial, but they are harming my dog. And these are stories that are across our nation. So I will give way.
And for the last 12 years, she's 12 now, it seems that it's getting worse and worse every year when it comes to your personal pets. It seems to me that's why the reduction in the decibels would be the most effective way of dealing with this, because then people could let fireworks off essentially when they want, where they want, as long as the sound was down. Does the honourable gentleman agree?
His intervention, I completely agree that the biggest harm for pets, for animals and for children and veterans, as we've heard, is from the loud noises that and they are going off at any time of the day. I don't know how it is across the country, but I have people in my constituency setting off fireworks during daylight hours. What is the point of that? So they're not just a joyous moment of celebration, but now have become a source of fear, distress and disruption. The harm caused by fireworks is well evidenced and widely documented. Sudden, unpredictable explosions cause severe distress to animals, triggering panic responses and long-term behavioural trauma.
Will my colleague give way?
I will give way.
I'd like to thank you. Thank you. I'd like to thank the honourable colleague for giving way, and he's making very good points in his speech today. My wife's guide dog, Pepsi, just like to say, Jenny actually is not bothered by fireworks. She actually seems to enjoy them. But my wife's dog, Pepsi, is actually terrified of them. And it's not only awful for the dog. What it means is that at that time of fireworks, my wife can't go out and socialise and equally do her business as a local councillor in Torbay. But I wonder if my colleague would reflect on the idea of firework-free zones, because I also have the pleasure of having Paignton Zoo in my constituency of Torbay, and the impact on zoos is massive. I thank my honourable friend for his intervention, and I completely support his call for firework-free zones. I have in my constituency both urban, industrial and rural areas, and there are places where fireworks are not appropriate. They will cause more harm in certain areas, and I completely support my honourable friend's call for firework-free zones. I will give way.
Being very generous with his interventions, thank you very much, and making a passionate about fireworks. Like the honourable member, I've had many constituents get in touch with me about the havoc that's been created for months and months, not just at bonfire night but around the year by fireworks. And they're in Glasgow asking Glasgow City Council to take more action and put on public displays so that people can go and enjoy the fireworks and it's not disrupting neighbours and communities. Does he agree that that's a sensible thing to do? And will he also recognise that it's often local community councils, like in my case, Pollokshaws and Eastwood Community Council, who bring to the fore the issues that firework-related disorder is causing?
I thank my honourable friend for his intervention, and I do agree that council-approved community-organised events bring people together. Whoever is going, they know what they're going to. Any pets that will be affected can be then kept away from that area for that period. The timing of these displays is also critical. So there should be a watershed, a time limit where fireworks should not be allowed beyond a certain time in the day. And I fully support his acknowledgement of the role of councils in helping communities enjoy fireworks in a responsible and less damaging way. We've also heard fireworks can be equally distressing for people, including veterans with PTSD, autistic and neurodivergent individuals, young children and the elderly. For these people, loud, unexpected noise can provoke severe anxiety. Worse still are the routinely reported cases of emergency workers being attacked with fireworks. These impacts are not confined to a single night, but are repeated over weeks and months, creating prolonged periods of stress. The harms that emerge from fireworks are not hypothetical, but recurring, predictable, and preventable. These petitions do not call for some totalitarian overreach of the state in pushing for an outright ban. They recognise the cultural importance of fireworks in bringing communities together, but rightfully argue that public access in its current form is outdated and irresponsible. There was an incident in my constituency during the last bonfire, not night, but it's like weeks, where a firework rocket had been let off at the wrong angle and had pierced through the windscreen of a parked car. Thankfully, nobody was hurt, but the rocket was lodged in the windscreen. Now, I don't know what his or her insurance company said about that, but that could have been a child or a human being or an animal, and the results would have been catastrophic. Other European countries have introduced more stringent restrictions, leading to fewer injuries and continued public support. Even within the UK, Scotland and Northern Ireland, Scotland and Northern Ireland have stricter regulations than England. Alternatives such as organised displays, quieter fireworks and modern light or drone shows that harness technological developments are increasingly popular and far less harmful. Responsible celebration should not come at the expense of animals, vulnerable individuals, or community well-being. I therefore urge the government to listen carefully to this recurring debate. It's the first debate I've taken part in. I wasn't able to take part in last year, but I've known from the research that this comes around every year, and it's really important that we do something about this. So the government, I urge them to listen carefully to the petitioners, to conscientious animal welfare experts, and to those that so diligently advocate for persons with disabilities, and to bring forward meaningful reform that strikes a better balance between collaboration. I was just finishing, but I will give way.
Thank you, honourable gentleman, for giving way. I completely agree with him and appreciate the hundreds of people in my own constituency who have signed these petitions. Does he agree with me when we talk about government action, it must include, if we're going to end up with a licence scheme, giving local authorities the money to be able to enforce these provisions? Because if not, we will all be going back to our constituencies, picking up the phone to our council chief execs, going, this is the law, why aren't you enforcing it?
Honourable friend for his intervention. I completely agree. Councils are overloaded, overburdened. They are asked to do more with less. And it's really important that any change in legislation that gives councils the authority and the powers to help with the situation is backed by finance and teeth. So to conclude, just to repeat, I hope the government will listen to the petitioners and bring forward reforms that strike a better balance between celebration and compassion. Thank you.
Alison Hume and then Sarah Dyke. Alison Hume.
Thank you, Mr. Pritchard. It is a pleasure to serve under your chairship. It seems to me that we've been discussing the possibility of restricting the use of fireworks to organise public events for many years. While we talk, more people suffer life-changing injuries, which would be avoidable if we had tighter restrictions on the use of fireworks. 869 constituents in Scarborough and Whitby signed the petition to limit the sale of fireworks to those running local council-approved events only, and I agree with them. The easy availability of fireworks, which are marketed and sold in the same way as sweets or toys, belies the fact that they are in fact dangerous explosives. On the beaches in my constituency, it is the custom for the public to gather and let off fireworks on days like Bonfire Night and New Year's Eve. I'm not sure if people really understand that they could be taking their lives into their own hands if they go onto the beach. I vividly remember running for cover once with my children on Tate Hill Beach in Whitby as rockets were let off sideways. Tragically, last year, 2 young men suffered life-changing injuries when fireworks were let off on the Scarborough foreshore near the lifeboat station. And sadly, incidents like this are frighteningly common. In 2025, there was a 4-fold increase in firework-related burns to children compared to the previous year, the highest admittance rate in a decade. Most injuries are to the eyes, head or hands, resulting in loss of sight, life-changing injuries and psychological impact. Mr. Pritchard, some of my constituents will disagree with my call for fireworks to be restricted to organised displays only. They will say I am spoiling their fun. I humbly disagree. The United Kingdom is out of step with other countries who have already put safety first. The Netherlands is the latest country to implement a nationwide ban on consumer fireworks, joining Germany, the Republic of Ireland, Australia and other countries who all have significant restrictions or bans on public sales. Since implementation, the number of firework-related injuries has been consistently lower. The public are telling us that fireworks are no longer essential for celebrations. A recent poll from the Social Market Foundation found that 91% of the British public would be open to partial replacement of fireworks with alternatives such as drone or light shows. I recently attended a spectacular drone display at Scarborough Castle to celebrate 400 years since the spa waters were discovered. I am certain that not a single person watching will have felt shortchanged. And alongside the safety aspects, as we've heard from other honourable members, there's also the impact that the increasingly noisy fireworks have on vulnerable people and animals. Veterans have written to me telling me that fireworks trigger their PTSD, and the impact is even worse when they're set off randomly and on no particular special occasion. And as an owner of a rescue dog and cat, I know how scared animals can be by fireworks. RSPCA research has shown that 66% of animals are negatively impacted. I will give way.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. She's making some excellent points. A constituent of mine who has a dog who is terribly frightened whenever there are fireworks going on is simply saying, can we not have some kind of a limit whereby fireworks don't go off after 11 p.m, for example? And she recalls an occasion where she had to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go to work, but couldn't because she was disturbed by fireworks during the night. And she makes an excellent point about public displays. As someone who has enjoyed having fireworks in the garden, I get much more joy now going to a public display, being with other people and seeing much better fireworks, in fact, than I were able to have at the home. Does she agree that the problem at the moment is that we have no control whatsoever and that some steps need to be taken now?
The honourable member makes an important point, and other honourable members have made the point in the debate that we have passed the point now where we used to be watching fireworks safely in our back gardens. Fireworks are being let off all the time, every day, all day sometimes, and I too have seen the terrible effect on animals, particularly dogs, who, despite maybe being sedated or whatever the vets recommend, they are terrified out of their skins, and I thank him for his intervention. In conclusion, Chair, the time for talking is over. The evidence is clear. The current guidance and legislation needs urgently reviewing. The maximum decibel level must be reduced immediately to 90 decibels, and I call on the government to urgently review fireworks regulation in England and Wales with a view to limiting the dangerous and antisocial use of fireworks in private and public spaces.
And Gillett Campbell, then Gideon Amos, Sarah Dyke.
Thank you, Mr Pritchard. It's an honour to serve with you in the chair today. I'd like to thank the Petitions Committee for bringing this debate forward, and to the combined 671 petitioners of Glastonbury and Somerton. Firework displays have long lit up the skies in celebration throughout the year, with illuminations capturing the imaginations of young and old alike. But whilst many enjoy the spectacle, we must also recognise the negative impact such displays can have on people, as well as on animals and nature, and some in society. Mel from Street told me recently that one loud bang will bring their beloved pet, their dog in fact, into a state of severe anxiety, shaking, panting and fainting, the seizures sometimes lasting up to 24 hours or so. Mr Pritchard, in rural communities like Glastonbury and Somerton, it's not just pets that are impacted, as fireworks can have a horribly damaging impact on livestock too. Research carried out on the impact of fireworks on farm animals found that sudden, unexpected, loud or novel noises can be highly stressful, given they are more sensitive, animals are more sensitive to high-frequency noises than to humans. The welfare of farmed animals regulations state that in England and Wales, pigs must not be exposed to constant or sudden noise, while noise levels above 85 decibels must be avoided where pigs are kept. Mr Pritchard, it's also illegal to light fireworks near fields and barns where animals are housed, but yet we hear about livestock being impacted by fireworks every single year. Cows and sheep often panic and try and flee when they hear fireworks, often injuring themselves whilst doing so. Pigs, hens and chickens often instinctively huddle, which can lead to some being smothered or suffocated in the chaos. Vicky, a dairy farmer, contacted me last autumn after fireworks were set off by her neighbour, scaring her cattle. 20 of her cattle escaped, one heavily pregnant cow died, and shortly after, another needed emergency veterinary treatment and sadly had to be slaughtered a few days later because it had stopped eating, moving and ruminating. Vicky told me that her cows wear health collars and all indicated high stress levels at the time that the fireworks were set off. Mr Pritchard, like many rural communities, Glastonbury and Somerton is home to many horses. Like livestock, a horse's reaction to fireworks is often to bolt, which can result to injury or worse, death. Now, sadly, I was alerted to a heartbreaking story that took place near Curry Rival, where a horse bolted in panic from fireworks and broke its neck and had to be put down, leaving the owner distraught by the painful and quite unnecessary death of their treasured steed. Now, while there are sensible precautions that can be taken with domestic animals, of course this isn't possible with livestock and horses. Concerningly, many livestock and horse owners report to me that they aren't given the warnings of local displays. But I believe that much more must be done to adequately alert people to organise public displays, and I would like to thank all of those responsible organisers who do this. But the real difficulty, I believe, often often lies with the increasing number of small private displays. And the Liberal Democrats share concerns that the current noise limit on private displays doesn't go far enough in protecting pets, livestock and wildlife. Because it's not just animals who are impacted by fireworks. It's people living with PTSD who often struggle with when they are exposed to fireworks. 11% of households in Glastonbury and Somerton are home to at least one veteran. Linda from Martock wrote to me regarding her son who served in the army for 25 years, detailing how much untold damage fireworks do to him. And I'm very proud that we have Service Dogs UK based in the constituency who do a huge amount of work with our veterans who are suffering with PTSD. And I'll stop there, Mr. Pritchard.
Thank you, Mr. Pritchard, and it is a pleasure to serve in your chairship today. And I thank the member for Keighley and Ilkley for bringing this petition for debate. It is a pleasure to speak on behalf of my constituents in Broxtowe who have contacted me on many occasions on this very issue about the impact that the widespread sale and use of fireworks has on their lives. This is clearly an issue that resonates not just in my constituency but for people across the country. I've received correspondence from pet owners, farmers, concerned residents who are deeply concerned about the well-being of animals. I have a cat myself, and she is inconsolable by the noise that is had on bonfire night. It can cause lots of distress to pets and livestock. But it's not just limited to animals. I've had emails from veterans, people with PTSD, elderly people, and others that have sensitivity to loud noises. And they find that fireworks are just too distressing. I've had emails from people from Eastwood, Chilwell, Beeston, Bramcote, Cossall, Trowell and Alsworth across my whole constituency. And some of my constituents have also written that there have been injuries from fireworks too. I'll give you 2 examples. One of my constituents described an incident where a misfired rocket headed towards a child's pram. It was only through the quick thinking and actions by a bystander that the child was unharmed, though the courageous bystander suffered burns himself. Another constituent of mine described how her son had been shot at with fireworks on his way home from school. We can only imagine the distress that this caused. And I'm sure many of you around the room will have equally troubling accounts from your constituents. Stories like this show us why stronger measures are now essential. That being said, I do want to acknowledge the importance of fireworks in community celebrations, such as New Year's Eve, Bonfire Night. It brings people together across Broxtowe and the UK. So it's vital that we don't diminish these occasions. However, it is clear that regulations need to come into place. Any policy put forward on this... I'll give way.
There's clearly a consensus across the chamber for that balance between people enjoying the fireworks displays and the well-being and safety of animals and people and communities. Would she agree with me that in finding that balance we must put the priority on the matter of welfare, safety and well-being of communities, people and animals?
My honourable friend for his intervention. And I absolutely agree that the priority for any changes in policy or legislation must take into account all of those who are impacted, be they animals or the behaviour of people making things dangerous for others. Any policy put forward on this issue needs to have a clear balance, appreciating those events that I spoke of earlier, while ensuring long-term reduction in the potential harm of fireworks themselves and the noise that they create. We could learn from our international counterparts like Netherlands, parts of Italy and Poland, where low noise fireworks have been mandated in certain places and they have felt the benefits. In conclusion, I hope that this debate results in some practical, beneficial changes and that consideration will be given to the valuable contributions made here today.
Gideon Amos and then Amanda Hack. Gideon Amos.
Well, it's a pleasure to serve the committee with you and the chair, and thank you for giving us the innovative heads up on who's coming on the speaking list. I'd also extend my thanks to the member for Keighley and Ilkley for opening a debate and taking so many interventions. Noisy fireworks, of course, especially at times when they're not expected, outside the given days of fireworks like New Year's Eve, Diwali, Chinese New Year, cause real distress and, as we've heard, injury as well. So I'd like to add my thanks to the 269 who signed the petition on their noise and the 276 who signed the petition on organised displays, respectively, from Taunton and Wellington, for bringing this to Parliament's attention. Particularly affected, as honourable members have said, are those who suffer from PTSD, those with autism, and we need to take their concerns a lot more seriously than we have. It's possible to ready yourself if you know that fireworks are coming or explosions are going to be happening in your neighbourhood, but indiscriminate use can be really affecting. And of course, when it comes to animals, we know that many die as a result: horses, dogs and wildlife. So I agree wholeheartedly with the petitioners' concerns about the use of fireworks for all the reasons they set out, and I share those concerns. In Taunton, in French Weir Park, a private display on New Year's Eve nearly turned into a disaster this year. A big pack of spent fireworks was placed beside a group of litter and recycling bins, perhaps with the aim of being helpful, after a big display by private individuals using the park at midnight. Unfortunately, it was left still smouldering. The fireworks hadn't gone out. The set of bins encased in timber frame and boarding went up in flames 10 feet or more in the air, within a foot of overhanging branches and 2 or 3 metres from the timber-built Centre for Outdoor Activity and Community Hub. Fortunately, as is so often the case, volunteers came out of their homes, and the excellent members of the French Weir Park got on the case immediately. The fire brigade was called and the building didn't catch fire and the whole issue was safely dealt with. The main message I'd like to get across, Mr. Pritchard, is that it is completely illegal to use the park for private fireworks displays. So if you're thinking of doing it, please don't. Please go to a professional event instead and keep our parks and buildings safe. But the other thing this showed, of course, is that even with really tough laws preventing this, breaching the current rules at the moment can result in on-the-spot fines of £90 or fines of up to £5,000 or imprisonment. Fireworks are still set off by individuals privately, and by the time police officers, or in this case a fire brigade, arrive, those concerned are long gone and the display is over. So I feel that banning private use of fireworks completely would not be the right approach, and it would curtail enjoyment for people who are acting responsibly, but would also be ineffective. But we do urgently need action, and I support, as other members have said, and as the Liberal Democrats do, reducing the noise limit from the 120 decibels down to 90 decibels at least, as it is the noise that causes some of the most harm to people and to animals. And we need to see reasonable time limits, as I think other members said opposite, on the shops that sell them, as the introducer of the debate said, also on the durations and on the dates, something I believe that other members have proposed. I'll continue to support a change in the law. It's urgently needed. I hope Parliament can work together on this so fireworks don't always have to go out with a bang, Mr. Pritchard. Sorry about that.
If I call Amanda Hack, I will then call Dr. Scott Arthur, keeping to my word of calling Labour members that found themselves sat on the other side of the chamber, and then Sarah Hall. Amanda Hack.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a pleasure to serve on your chairship. And I also want to thank the member for Keighley and Ilkley for bringing forward this petition debate. As a semi-rural MP proudly representing North West Leicestershire, it's a beautiful constituency with the heart of the National Forest, surrounded by countryside and farmland and an abundance of wildlife and livestock, as well as being the main home base for canine partners. It's unsurprising that hundreds of constituents have emailed me about the need to further regulate fireworks in this country, and more than 650 signatures across both of these petitions. I just wanted to highlight that neither of these petitions
call for the banning of fireworks, a common misconception around this debate. We're here to discuss minimising the impact that they have on people, on livestock, our neighbours and our pets. And it's important it's this what we focus on. We know that most people use fireworks in a responsible, safe and an appropriate manner, and that there are laws already in place to address situations where fireworks are misused, such as limiting the sale of fireworks to licensed traders, and it's an offence to use fireworks after 11 and before 7 a.m. without express permission. However, as a dog owner myself, I know this doesn't go quite far enough. Just yesterday, we had some loud fireworks go off just at 5 p.m. next to my home, and that meant no walk for the dog, and unusually, the cats were also frightened by them. It's not only just animals that are scared by the noise, but the distress and subsequent harm it can cause. When fireworks are going off to horses and livestock, they can be at risk of injuring themselves on fencing, farm equipment, or fixtures and fittings within their housing if startled. And of course, not just impacting our animals, but veteran and vulnerable people too. For those suffering with PTSD, the loud bangs are huge triggers. PTSD UK did a study last year on the effect of fireworks on those with PTSD, and 85% of respondents saying that fireworks make them feel unsafe in their homes, and 27.2% have sought medical or therapeutic support due to fireworks-related stress. Surely this can't continue. It's not difficult to be a little bit more thoughtful and kind to our neighbours, to collectively take a step back and think about those loud noises and the impact they have on so many. People can enjoy firework displays without fear. However, we have to recognise the volume of fireworks, particularly in Leicestershire. It just seems to go on for weeks and weeks. And actually, one of the things that I've reflected on during the last fireworks night is being back in London early November. I realised just how quiet it is here compared to my own constituency. That's why I supported the Honourable Member for Luton North fireworks bill. And I want to thank her for all the hard work and the hope of action going forward. Reducing the maximum noise level for consumer fireworks from 120 to 90 decibels, as the bill calls, and for one of the petitions always suggests, just seems to be such a sensible step forward, could have real positive impacts on our communities, on our veterans, on vulnerable people, our pets, livestock and wildlife. This would also limit the impact of home firework displays. Although I agree, again, we need to look at the sale of regulations of fireworks. It's ultimately making sure that our people are safe. Firework displays can still be beautiful and fun, or arguably, if they are a little bit quieter. It's just that those being a bit more respectful for those around us. Just imagine if those people who are frightened of fireworks could actually go and enjoy them because they're that bit quieter. It means that more people can enjoy what displays can offer. Thank you.
Dr. Scott Arthur, Sarah Hall, Kirstine Sullivan, then Elsie Blundell, and then I will vacate the chair for my replacement. Dr. Scott Arthur.
Thank you, Mr. Pritchard. Surely you are irreplaceable. Change in this domain is inevitable. I think the government can either choose to act proactively or it's going to end up reacting to events, perhaps where someone is killed. And so I think it's really important that we remember that. We had this debate last year. I spoke about the lawlessness we'd seen in Edinburgh South West in 2024 and in Edinburgh more widely. Across the city, the police and firefighters were attacked with fireworks, bricks and bottles, and our public transport system was also heavily targeted. A red panda in Edinburgh Zoo died. In my constituency, disorder in areas included Sighthill, Oxgangs, Calder Road and Broomhouse left my constituents terrified and afraid to leave their houses. A care home, petrol station and car dealership were all attacked. It was shameful that disorder of this level took place and that in large part it was fuelled by the easy access to large stocks of fireworks. In 2024, after this, I visited the police and they showed me photographs of fireworks they had confiscated from a gentleman who had them in the back of his van. He was going around selling them to young people for profit. In 2025, an individual was caught with £42,000 worth of fireworks that he intended to sell to people on the street. Firework exclusion zones have been set up in Scotland since then. These are important, but ultimately they're very difficult to enforce, as we've already heard. Very happy to.
For giving way on that point. And it is an important point around firework control zones because they were kind of sold as a bit of a silver bullet. Unfortunately, I heard from fire chiefs and from police officers during my time as a councillor that they had been given no additional resources or funding to enforce these zones. Surely that is a must.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know in Edinburgh, the planning and resourcing that goes into enforcing these is absolutely incredible. And I also want to thank the police for the work they do, often facing real risks to do so. But I think what we really have to tackle is the import and sale of fireworks. But last year, in response to events in 2024, my office undertook a local campaign. We wrote to all the supermarkets asking them to end the sale of fireworks. And I want to thank Hannah from my office for doing that. And I'm proud that all the major supermarkets have now stopped selling fireworks in Edinburgh South West. A fantastic achievement. And this is also the case all across much of the city because my honourable friends, the members for Edinburgh South and Edinburgh East and Musselburgh were also able to copy what we'd done and achieve the same in their constituencies. Around this time, I was copied into a letter to the Chief Executive of ASDA because they had just agreed to stop selling fireworks in my constituency. This was a letter, this was an email from the British Fireworks Association. He said the people behind the campaign in Edinburgh South West, my constituents, were very small, ill-informed and vocal self-interest groups. These are people who are pet lovers, veterans. I do have a lot of veterans in my constituency, people who might be neurodiverse, or people that have just had enough. He went on to say that the regulated sales ensure that customers are purchasing from a trusted source. Often, he said, often with clear instructions and safety warnings. Often with instructions. Absolutely incredible. Thankfully, without their help, the situation across Edinburgh South West really did improve, in part because of what the supermarkets did. And I do want to thank the supermarkets. And while the police were called to some incidents of antisocial behaviour in Edinburgh South West, those involved dispersed when officers arrived, and there were no more serious offences committed. Perhaps because from the previous year, the police had managed to prosecute quite a number of people who were caught. So I cannot commend strongly enough the work that the local police and community groups did on the build-up to November the 5th last year. And many, many months of work really did pay off. And I'm proud of the small contribution my office made to that. But the difference to Edinburgh South West in terms of the much lower level of violence was at least in part because it was harder to buy fireworks. So I do think the government has to look at this. Think about the role of organised displays like we have in Edinburgh at the Valley and Hogmanay, and organised by people like the Curry and Balerno District Round Table. And think about, does anybody else really need to be able to buy fireworks? Do we want to be proactive as a government and keep people safe, or wait until more people are injured? And I really do feel it's incumbent on the government to act. The Netherlands started 2026 with a firework ban. Wouldn't it be great if this country did the same to start 2027? And I thank you, Mr. Pritchard.
Hear, hear. Hold on.
Thank you.
Experiences and the reality of their life on their streets. In shaping my contribution to this debate, I asked constituents to share their thoughts and experiences of fireworks as they are used today. Many people spoke about animals and their pets, dogs and cats traumatised by loud bangs, hiding for days, injuring themselves in panic or becoming permanently anxious. Others raised the wider impact on wildlife and livestock and the distress caused when explosions happen without warning. I also heard from parents about their children with autism and other disabilities for whom the noise is overwhelming and frightening, often leading to meltdowns and heightened anxiety. And many people expressed concerns about the impact on veterans and others living with PTSD. Fireworks are no longer confined to 1 or 2 predictable nights. Constituents describe them being set off throughout the year, late at night, often without notice. That unpredictability makes it almost impossible to prepare, to calm a distressed animal, to support a vulnerable child, or simply feel settled in your own home. Fireworks are explosives, and we already accept that they need regulation. But the clear message from my constituents is that the balance is no longer right. Not a single person who contacted me said they wanted fireworks banned outright. What they are asking for is better regulation, regulation that reflects how fireworks are actually being used today. There is strong support for quieter fireworks, including silent options, and for a shift towards organised, licensed displays with clear start and end times. These approaches don't end tradition, they make it safer, more predictable and more considerate of others. And we do have a strong tradition of celebration and commemoration in this country. From bonfire night at Felwall Parish Hall to ringing in the New Year with Big Ben and celebrating Diwali and Lunar New Year. Yes.
Giving way. I love New Year's fireworks and always recall how enjoyable my local council run fireworks were. But as someone who's had fireworks thrown at me and gets reports from constituents, I understand how terrifying it can be. And I also worry about the fact that when it comes to regulation, it definitely seems like we need more, and constituents complain that when they call the police, because it's not considered as serious, they don't necessarily come, or they'll come a few days later. Does my honourable friend agree that part of the appeal of personal fireworks displays is the fact that local councils like my own have had to cut their budget in terms of fireworks, so are not able to do it, and other ones end up being ticketed so people across the area aren't necessarily able to participate?
I think that when this is considered, it needs to be considered in the round in terms of if regulations are going to be put in place, that funding requirement to fill that gap is going to be needed, absolutely. So for too many people, fireworks don't mean celebration anymore. They mean disruption and nights without sleep. This debate isn't about banning joy. It's about listening carefully to the people we represent and asking whether our laws still reflect the reality on our streets, in our towns and in our villages. People aren't asking us to end fireworks, they're asking us to regulate them better. And I think that's a reasonable request from my constituents and from thousands of others from across the country.
Kirstine Sullivan, after whom I'll be calling Elsie Blundell and Anna Dixon.
Thank you, Jardine, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairship today, and may I thank the member for Keithley and Ilkley for presenting this petition on behalf of the Petitions Committee. It's clear that there is a strength of feeling about fireworks, not only in this place but up and down the country, not least with the 345 constituents of mine who have signed the petitions that we are debating today. As we've heard, fireworks can have absolutely devastating impacts on our neighbourhoods, with families afraid to go out, homes and drivers under attack, and animals in terror. For years, Blackburn, in my constituency of Bathgate and Linlithgow, was known to be a hotspot for dangerous bonfire night disorder. Emergency services came under attack, fireworks were routinely used as weapons, and residents were frightened in their own streets and in their own homes. When I first became a councillor in 2017, I learned very quickly the depth of fear, frustration and anger within that community. At one memorable public meeting, anger at perceived inaction threatened to boil over into hostility. But despite widely talked about illegal fireworks sales and numerous incidents, police and fire officers hadn't received any reports, and there was a bit of a light bulb moment then that everybody had a part to play in making Blackburn a safer place around bonfire night. So instead of allowing frustration to fester, everyone came together. Police and fire services coordinated their response with other services, including various council departments and members of the Blackburn community. And that led to the establishment of the Blackburn Bonfire Night Action Group in 2019. This group worked throughout the year to provide diversionary activities for young people and to coordinate the police and fire planning and response alongside that of other services. But crucially, proactive community engagement increased reporting of criminal activities such as illegal sales of fireworks, the creation of dangerous bonfires and incidents like fireworks thrown at drivers, pets and so on. Crime Stoppers saw a major increase in reports from worried residents in subsequent years. This worked because it was a genuine partnership shaped and driven by the people who lived in the village, the people who for years had felt terrorised by a small minority hell-bent on causing chaos and fear on the lead-up to the 5th of November. And whilst the problems haven't been completely eradicated, there has been a vast improvement on the scenes of 2017 and 2018. The Blackburn Bonfire Night Action Group has received national recognition for its work, being praised in the Scottish Parliament for reducing issues around antisocial behaviour during bonfire season, and I commend everyone who's played a part in this initiative for their commitment and efforts in addressing what has been a very complex issue. Ultimately, it's people in our communities, in our neighbourhoods, who know exactly what's going on, and they're the ones that have to live with the consequences. Fireworks policies must be made with communities, not imposed on them, and councils in Scotland and other vital public services, like Police Scotland and Scottish Fire and Rescue, must be resourced and funded to deliver those policies. Communities like Blackburn deserve nothing less.
Thank you. After Elsie Blundell, I'll call Anna Dixon and then Alex Ballinger. Elsie Blundell.
I think Alex Ballinger's left. Opportunity to raise the views of my constituents in this debate, over 650 of whom have signed the first of the 2 petitions being considered today. Many of these constituents have made their views known to me this weekend and previously when I made clear that I would be speaking in this debate. Whether it's on the 5th of November, New Year's Eve or Eid, fireworks have become part of our national story and are interwoven in this country's rich history. But while so many enjoy these colourful displays, there are also those who are filled with anxiety each time November comes around. Whether it's veterans working to overcome what they've had to endure while serving, those who work shifts or irregular hours, or families with young children, there are legitimate reasons as to why people are concerned, not only with the level of noise involved in these events, but the frequent spillover into days and weeks prior to or after the events themselves. Bonfire night is no longer just a night. As we all know, there are displays, organised or otherwise, which take place throughout the winter months, much to the consternation of many in our communities. We must also consider that there is a small but dangerous minority who misuse fireworks in antisocial behaviour that strikes fear into the hearts of many vulnerable residents and adds further pressure to our emergency services who are already under considerable strain. It's clear that some individuals have lost sight of what these events are all about and instead use fireworks to intimidate and threaten, putting themselves and those around them at serious risk. And this is without considering the impacts that weeks upon weeks of explosions have on our family pets, local wildlife and biodiversity. Indeed, one constituent, Pete Knowles from the Stony Hill Community Wildlife Area, raised that in summer in our area, barely a week goes by without disturbance to wildlife, pets and people. He made clear the acute risk to hibernating wildlife, the local bat population and nocturnal species such as badgers, foxes and wood mice. We've each heard from countless constituents who have written to us to let us know the damage that fireworks do to their family members, and I truly believe that we really have to find a way to continue our enjoyment whilst remaining aware of people who hold such strong and genuine opposing views. This requires both common sense and compassion by considering how we can further limit the use of fireworks outside of holidays so that people don't need to endure weeks of potential anguish. Next, strengthening local enforcement on the run-up to these events and to crack down on any retailers that sell fireworks to anyone under the age of 18. We all know that it continues to happen and it needs to stop. We must look more closely at the actions of other countries that have legislated for a firework noise reduction from 120 to 90 decibels. Some of these explosions are too loud, and we need to remember that behind every door there could well be a person or animal being tormented. And finally, prohibit the bulk buying and stockpiling of fireworks by enforcing laws that are already in place. There is no need for it, and it must also be urgently curtailed. As I said in my opening remarks, fireworks can bring people together, but there are also many who should not have to continue to endure the status quo, and I believe that it would be remiss of us as parliamentarians to stand here again next year and indulge in the same debate with nothing achieved in the interim. I hope that the Minister can touch on some of these points in their closing remarks, and I would like to thank my constituents in Hayward and Middleton North for their candour in relaying their views on this issue to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Anna Dixon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship today, Ms Jardine. I'd also like to thank over 1,000 of my Shipley constituents who responded to today's petitions. The antisocial use of fireworks is a blight to our communities. Since I was elected a year and a half ago, hundreds of constituents have contacted my office. They've been in touch from across the Shipley constituency, from Baildon, Bingley, Willesden, Rose, Cottingley and Collingworth. They tell me that loud fireworks keep them awake at night, cause distress to young and old, to pets and farm animals. And for one veteran I met, suffering with PTSD, it re-traumatises him every time. I've campaigned vociferously to put a stop to this. I've written to ministers, spoken to the local police, met with campaign groups and raised the matter in Parliament on multiple occasions. In October, I launched my own petition calling for a reduction in the legal decibel limit for fireworks sold in the UK. And that petition is now supported by almost 5,000 people. This is a massive issue and it needs to be addressed.
Will Member bring way?
I'm happy to give way.
I thank her very much for giving way, and I shared her petition with my constituents, so I want to thank her for the campaigning that she did on that issue. I was actually looking at the General Petitions website for this Parliament. There are 199 petitions with fireworks somewhere in the description, which I think is an incredible number when you consider the 601 for the NHS, which is a huge issue, 553 on housing and 367 on immigration. So 199 fireworks is a significant percentage, and I wonder whether she'd agree with me that actually, compared to those other issues, this is something that's relatively easy to fix, and therefore the government should grasp hold of this issue.
I thank the Honourable Gentleman for his intervention, and I'm sure that the Minister will have heard his plea along with that of many members in the Westminster Hall today. To be clear, this isn't about stopping anyone from enjoying fireworks. I enjoy good fireworks as much as the next person. In fact, the sparkler is my favourite. Celebrating Bonfire Night, New Year's Eve, Diwali, Eid, these festivities are part of our social fabric that brings us together as families, friends and communities. What this is about is tackling the antisocial use of fireworks. I'm proud that the previous Labour government did a lot on this issue. The Fireworks Regulations 2004 imposed curfews on fireworks, restricted their sale to certain times of the year for unlicensed sellers and outlawed their use in public places. When we last were in power, we made great strides, but further change is well overdue. As many of my Shipley constituents would tell you, the antisocial use of fireworks persists despite the best efforts of Bradford Council, trading standards, the fire service and the police in enforcing the current law. In the run-up to Bonfire Night, some £10,000 worth of fireworks were seized by West Yorkshire Police from rogue sellers. And thanks to the tireless work of the West Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service in prevention and education, working with partners in the community, most celebrations last year went off without incident in Bradford. Other members have spoken with great passion about the safety concerns, particularly my honourable friend for Scarborough and Whitby, and I support a lot of what's been said today. But I think the most important thing where we want action, and action soon, is on noise. The volume of fireworks available for sale in the UK is 120, and we've heard many other members talk powerfully about the need to reduce the noise. It could be easily achieved by a simple amendment to Regulation 8 of the Fireworks Regulation 2004, which already prohibits the supply, purchase or possession of Category 3 fireworks whose noise levels exceed 120. Furthermore, I would support a ban on the general sale of Category 3 fireworks, limiting these to authorised events in the same way as Category 4 fireworks. I urge the government to make these changes, and I would urge the Minister to work closely with the member for Luton North, who I commend for all her work, to find a way to change the law to reduce the distress of fireworks to people, to veterans, to pets and to all of us, so we can all get a good night's sleep. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex Ballinger is not here anymore, so I'm going to call Justin Madders and then Patricia Ferguson. Justin Madders.
Thank you, Mr. Guardian. It's a pleasure to see you in the chair, and can I start by congratulating the honourable member for Keighley and Ilkley for his breakneck introduction, taking so many interventions on a massive issue. He's, of course, right, as many members have been right to observe, that we have had these debates year on year. I remember being sat over there whilst in opposition. I remember being sat there on another occasion last year, and now I'm here. And I think every year we get more and more members attending and more members of the public demanding change. So I think the case has been made that it is now time to act. It's interesting to note that despite an increased awareness campaign in the last year, there were 550 child admissions to A&E on bonfire night for burns alone. I think that shows us that education and information can only get us so far. And of course, as we've heard, there are adverse impacts from using fireworks when they're used responsibly as well. People are, of course, impacted by the noise, as we've heard. For some, they're a nuisance. They can interrupt sleep or leisure. For others, bangs can be harmful, particularly those with sensory challenges or conditions like PTSD. And with this in mind, I understand why some want greater restrictions on who can put on displays and on the days on which they can do that. And in my time as the Minister responsible for product regulation, I engaged with businesses, consumer groups, charities to gather evidence on the issues and impacts of fireworks. I also met with a number of MPs, some of whom are here today, to hear about the impact that it was having in their communities. Of course, there was a wide range of views, as we've heard today, about what could be done. But my view when I embarked on those discussions was that, as a minimum, a relatively straightforward change that we could make would be to reduce the decibel level from 120. Nothing I've heard during those discussions and during the debate today has changed my view that actually, as a minimum, reducing the decibel levels is a straightforward step that we should be taking. Of course, the precise level should be determined by consultation, but I think we've heard strong cases as to what that level should be this evening. That would reduce the noise, it would reduce the impact on people and animals, and it wouldn't actually harm manufacturers or impact on the quality of displays. It really is a straightforward thing that we could do. Of course, there have been plenty of other suggestions. One of the petitions under consideration calls for a limit on the sales to local authority approved events only. Other suggestions have included limiting locations, the days and times in which fireworks can be released. But I think one of the things that's clear to me is that those kind of measures don't work unless we get enforcement properly resourced. I think the experience in Scotland was also instructive that actually you can tighten the rules, but it doesn't actually necessarily deliver change. The reality is trading standards is overstretched and underfunded, meaning that any form of close monitoring of fireworks sales will be very difficult. I don't think that there is a consensus as to how best we move forward on that, and there is also a concern that this would simply move sales into the black market. That's why I think, as New Zealand have done, a reduction in decibel levels is something I think we can do as a straightforward, simple step. But I'll be candid, Ms Jardine, I think there is a view held by some in government that taking action on this is seen as the nanny state. I think that's a view that is wrong, and when I hear today that we're looking to consult on banning social media for under-16s, I don't think the nanny state argument can possibly be consistently held any further. So I will continue to advocate for a reduction in decibel levels. Sadly, I wasn't able to do that when I was in office, but I am convinced that taking this step would affect those most impacted by noise, those with certain mental health conditions, those who are neurodiverse, and of course those who care about the welfare of animals. And this could be done without taking anything away from the people who enjoy fireworks. So I wish the Minister well in trying to navigate the competing views and administrative blockages that she will face, but I hope that she will come to the same conclusion that I did, that the easiest and best way to address this is through a reduction in decibel levels. And as we've seen from the consensus around the table today, with reference to my honourable friends, the member for Luton North's private members bill, this is going to happen through Parliament, whether it's through government action or whether it's through backbench action. So I would urge the Minister to act now.
After Patricia Ferguson, I'll call Jonathan Brash. Patricia Ferguson.
Thank you, Captain, and it's always a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for Keighley and Ilkley for the way in which he laid out the debate this afternoon, and also the petitioners for taking the time to give us their views too. As we've heard already, fireworks can be a real source of entertainment and play a very important role in cultural celebrations. But sadly for many people and for many animals, they are instead a source of anxiety, distress and danger. Product safety and the sale of fireworks are a consumer safety issue and so reserved to Westminster. And current regulations prohibit the sale of fireworks to the public except during certain periods of the year, as we've heard, surrounding perhaps Chinese New Year, Diwali, Bonfire Night and New Year. But this easing of restrictions, while intended to allow the marking of significant cultural celebrations, creates extended periods of time where private backyard or back garden displays can occur sporadically with no prior warning. And the extended easing of restrictions over Bonfire Night has been highlighted by veterans' charities as a particular point of concern. The bright flashes of light, loud bangs and the smell of lingering smoke in the air can trigger PTSD in veterans. Moreover, this period of sale coincides with the period during which we remember those who have fallen in war and compound the distress already associated with this time. But the unpredictability of these backyard displays also places an unnecessary burden on vulnerable groups in our society and on pet owners, preventing them from planning ahead and putting precautions and coping strategies in place to limit the distress. In Scotland, the use of fireworks, that is, when and where they can be discharged, is a devolved issue. And as we've heard, some measures have been introduced to further restrict their use. In response to the antisocial behaviour associated with fireworks, the Scottish Government's Fireworks and Pyrotechnic Articles Act of 2022 provides local authorities with the power to designate firework control zones. In Glasgow, 3 firework zones were implemented last year between the 1st and 10th of November, although frustratingly the bid for a zone in Drumchapel in my Glasgow West constituency was rejected by Glasgow City Council. Residents living within the zones have reported a calmer environment, a quieter evening and a better experience. However, Glasgow as a whole still recorded the highest proportion of firework-related calls to the police compared to the rest of Scotland. In fact, double the number reported in the second highest, which was Edinburgh. But moreover, sound doesn't observe boundaries and doesn't understand the limitations of zones. So residents living within control zones noted that firework-related noise continued to be an issue. So there is a question about how you police such areas. In order to effectively tackle noise and antisocial behaviour issues, the implementation of a city-wide control zone would have made more sense, in my view. But the current legislation doesn't allow that, which seems to me to be a real problem. The Scottish Government's 2022 Act also legislated for the establishment and implementation of a new licensing scheme, which would require members of the public to obtain a licence before being allowed to purchase, possess or use fireworks. However, at the end of last year, the First Minister announced that the implementation of this scheme would be paused due to the complexity, which I understand, and also the cost of introducing it.
On that point, would my honourable friend give way?
Certainly.
I'm very much obliged to my honourable friend. Thank you, Chair. In my West Dunbartonshire constituency on the 5th of November last year, we experienced not only horrific effects on animals, but also unacceptable criminal conduct. We experienced large-scale chaos. Police riot vans were deployed after a 40-strong mob pelted explosives at people, local businesses and cars, and emergency services were attacked at several locations. Bonfire Night is just an excuse now, frankly, for antisocial behaviour, as are the weeks before and the weeks after. So does my honourable friend agree that the SNP Scottish Government needs to get a grip? Their failure to deliver the promised legislative protections has left communities such as West Dunbartonshire exposed.
Intervention, and I was going to go on to say that one of the other reasons, as well as the complexity, which, as I say, I understand, of introducing licensing in the way that the Scottish Government wanted to do it, was also the cost, which seemed to me particularly ironic, given that they've had, for the second year running, a record devolution settlement. But I do understand the point the honourable member makes, and his constituency and mine are neighbours to one another. And in previous years, fortunately not for some time, we had instances in my constituency of thugs, frankly, because that's what they were, using scaffolding poles to fire fireworks at the police, who ended up having to bring in the riot squad to deal with it. So that kind of behaviour cannot be allowed, and any action that is taken must understand that not everyone is a good actor in this regard. But frankly, apart from anything else, I don't actually think the Scottish Government's licensing scheme would work. What we need are measures that are easily understood and easily enforceable. As we've heard, silent or much quieter fireworks and organised displays seem to me to be the way forward. Otherwise, if we don't listen to what people are telling us, we will continue to perpetuate an environment which detrimentally impacts and affects animal welfare and the welfare of vulnerable groups in our society. I think, Madam Chair, that this debate this afternoon has been a very, very interesting and very worthwhile one. But I hope that we will all resolve and that the Minister will agree that we shouldn't be back here debating it again next year.
Jonathan Brash. I'll call Laura Kirk-Smith. Mr Jonathan Brash.
Thank you, Mr Andy. It's a pleasure to see you in the chair. Can I start by thanking the Honourable Member for Keighley and Ilkley for the expert way in which he led this debate today. I think the last time I spoke in a petition debate that he led, we agreed across this chamber on mandatory digital ID, so I'm hoping for a similar outcome today. Can I also thank the petitioners Helen and Graham, as well as everybody else in the audience here today, and for the people across the country who have signed these two petitions. In my constituency alone of Hartlepool, 361 people signed a petition calling for fireworks sales to be limited to council-approved events. 227 signed a petition calling for lower noise levels. And I've also received 114 emails from Hartlepool residents, all calling for tighter controls or an outright ban on personal use. This tells us something very clear. It is not a niche concern. It is widespread and persistent across the country, including in Hartlepool. And I want to be clear from the outset, I support public firework displays. When they are organised, when they are well managed, they bring communities together. As a child, I loved attending the firework display at Ward Jackson Park in Hartlepool, and today Hartlepool is fortunate to still have a major public display at Seaton Carew, supported by Hartlepool Borough Council and sponsored by X-Energy, and I'm grateful that that support continues. But what my constituents are experiencing now goes far beyond a few celebratory nights. Fireworks in Hartlepool begin in September, intensify through October and November, and continue in December and into early January. For weeks at a time, there is no predictability and no break. And this has real consequences. Children are woken night after night. Elderly residents report fear and anxiety. In 2024, Hartlepool Police were forced to issue a dispersal order on the Bishop Cuthbert estate in Hartlepool after fireworks were being used as weapons, seriously injuring at least one young person. Pets suffer distress, and veterans and others living with trauma are affected by the sudden loud explosions. Calling for action is not being anti-fun. It's about respecting others. There is nothing nanny state about protecting the most vulnerable in our society. So limiting sales to council-approved events would bring order and safety to communities like Hartlepool. Reducing the maximum noise level to 90 decibels is a simple, common-sense approach. Quieter fireworks already exists. Alternatives are available. People in Hartlepool are not asking for celebrations to end. They're asking for balance and fairness. And I urge the Minister, who I know has listened intently all afternoon, to listen to these petitions, to listen to the messages from members across this House and from the people of Hartlepool. The current system is not working and it needs to change.
After Laura Kirk-Smith, I'll call Kat Eccles. Laura Kirk-Smith.
Thank you, Ms Jardine. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship and to contribute to this important debate. And I enjoyed my close-up view of the member for Keighley and Ilkley introducing it, but I have to say I'm glad to be back on the right side of the chamber now. I want to start by noting that over 740 constituents across Aylesbury and the villages have signed petitions raising these concerns, and I'm really grateful to them for doing so. It clearly shows how important this issue is to people, but also to their pets and their farm animals and to other livestock, as we've been discussing. I also want to pay tribute to charities such as the RSPCA and the Dogs Trust, who I know have worked tirelessly to highlight the impact that fireworks can have. Their research shows that 45% of surveyed dog owners reported that their dog was negatively affected by fireworks. And during the bonfire night and Diwali period, PetLog, the UK's lost and found microchip database, recorded an 81% surge in missing dog reports compared to the prior 2 weeks. It shows the devastating impact that fireworks can have on animals and on, of course, the households that own them. At the same time, I want to acknowledge that for many families across the country, fireworks, and for myself, fireworks are a source of joy and celebration, marking New Year, Diwali, Bonfire Night, Chinese New Year, and many other special occasions. And I would in no way want to discourage these important moments where our communities come together and celebrate. We don't have enough of those moments, and I think I recognise as well that the majority of people in Aylesbury and across the country want to celebrate, to enjoy those moments responsibly, and I'm glad they do so. So it seems to me that the question is, how do we strike the right balance between safety and welfare on the one hand and celebration on the other? I know the government has started doing some good work to build on. I think restricting the sale of fireworks to licensed traders and for certain occasions alongside the public safety campaigns that we've seen is a really good start, and I welcome the ongoing engagement from the government that I know is happening with consumer groups and businesses and charities to keep gathering the evidence that we need on this. But I also think for many of my constituents, and we've heard many examples here today, the evidence already feels very clear, and what they want to see is more action. And I'll quote just one constituent, Patricia Walker, who wrote to me describing the distress that her household experienced on New Year's Eve. She said, fireworks from 4 p.m. till 3 a.m, some sounding like missiles, nobody using fireworks wisely here. My dog shook for hours and was sick. I was up all night, not responsible or appropriate, she said. So can I ask the Minister to look at 3 points that have been raised with me in particular? The first is, as we've heard from others, I think the strong case for reviewing the maximum permitted noise level for consumer fireworks. As we know, at present this stands at 120 decibels, but I think that is far louder than is necessary to enjoy the visual celebration. Campaigners and petitioners have called for a reduction to 90 decibels. And I know that low noise fireworks are already widely available, and I think this wouldn't stop celebrations, but it would significantly reduce the harm to animals and the distress to people. And of course, we need to make sure it's enforceable online as well as in shops. Secondly, I'd like to ask that we look again at how the existing limits on times and days are enforced and whether further clarity might be needed. Many of the most distressing experiences arise from not just one evening, but from fireworks being set off repeatedly over several days or late into the night. And I think clearer enforcement and better public awareness around permitted use would help ensure that that more responsible behaviour becomes the norm. And thirdly, I think there is more we can do to improve predictability and consideration for others, particularly people who live near farms and near stables and near animal sanctuaries. Stronger guidance or encouragement around advance notification of firework use would allow animal owners and vulnerable residents to take some simple steps to prevent harm to them. This is already happening in some areas, I think, but it could be promoted much more widely, including in Aylesbury and the villages, and I think that would go a long way to help as well. So I'm grateful to the Minister for her consideration. I know she's been listening carefully through this long debate, and I look forward to hearing her responses.
Yeah. After Cat Eccles, I'll call Paul Wall. Cat Eccles.
The member for Keighley and Ilkley for securing this important debate and speaking so passionately on the issue. So every year in the weeks leading up to Bonfire Night on the 5th of November, people suffer life-changing injuries and animals and people suffer stress and fear which continues throughout the winter. Guy Fawkes Night celebrates a failed terrorist attack on this very building we're sitting in today, and had it succeeded, the Palace of Westminster would have been destroyed and hundreds of lives lost. Is this really a tradition that we should be continuing to celebrate in the 21st century? Over 600 of my constituents in Stourbridge have signed the 2 petitions to reduce firework noise and limit the sales, and I wholeheartedly support these measures. But actually, I would go further, just as they have recently done in the Netherlands. And as of the 1st of January this year, the sale and detonation of fireworks is illegal in the Netherlands. This was due to the large amount of deaths and serious injuries due to fireworks in the country, with one physician speaking of treating a patient in Amsterdam who was clutching their own eyeball after a fireworks injury. And the government in the Netherlands rightly decided this could not continue, and Germany, the Republic of Ireland and many Spanish cities have also implemented heavy restrictions on the sale and use of fireworks, and I believe it's time that Britain caught up. In previous debates on this subject, I've spoken of my 20-year career in the NHS, where I saw many people, mostly young, coming into hospital with those life-changing injuries, including loss of fingers, limbs and sight. Fireworks are putting increased pressure on our already overstretched NHS while causing long-term harm to people who've suffered those injuries. And the impact on pets and livestock is both horrendous and heartbreaking. Animals have much more acute hearing than people, very sensitive to high-pitched and sudden loud noises. And according to the British Veterinary Association and other surveys, over 60% of dog and cat owners say their pets are negatively impacted by fireworks. And as a cat owner, I can definitely relate to this. And when I've spoken to local charities and pet rescues like Stourbridge RSPCA, Stour Valley Cat Rescue or Cats Matter, they tell me of heartbreaking cases of pets suffering from firework noise. Now, since 2021, at least 26 horses have died, hundreds more have been injured in the UK as a result of fireworks-related incidents, and there are many cases of cows, chicken, deer and other animals facing awful injuries due to fireworks. But sadly, the Animal Welfare Act has failed to provide sufficient protection against these appalling acts of animal cruelty. It's often difficult to compile sufficient evidence that the use of fireworks is causing significant suffering, and it's also difficult to prove who set off a firework in a busy urban neighbourhood or if there is a crowd involved. These petitions highlight the growing support for stronger restrictions on the sale and use of fireworks. And further to that, a recent YouGov poll found that 91% of those surveyed are open to replacing fireworks with drones or light shows. We can't keep pretending that fireworks are just harmless fun. Our constituents have spoken and the evidence is overwhelming and the suffering is undeniable. Other nations have acted with courage and compassion, and Britain should not be the outlier that shrugs its shoulders while people are maimed and animals are terrified, just for the sake of a few minutes of noise and light. So let's build a future where celebration does not come at the cost of people's well-being or animal welfare. Let's ban the public sale and detonation of fireworks and save them for public organised displays. Thank you.
After Paul Waugh, I'll call Ruth Jones. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jolly. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairman. And I want to thank the member for keeping it in this debate. Rochdale has the second highest number of signatures in the country signing the petition to limit the sale of fireworks to approved events only. And that's 813 people in Rochdale. Add the 222 who also signed the petition calling for a maximum noise level, and that's more than 1,000 people in my constituency who take this very, very seriously. Fireworks, as many have said, are meant to be a cause of celebration, but for far too many, and many animals and pet owners and humans, they are a cause of distress and terror. My dog, Oscar, like so many others, is absolutely terrified of fireworks. Now, I used to be able to handle that because it was a rare event. But now, it's not a one-off every now and then. It's regular. It's a regular event, but it's also all year round. Constituents like Marina Berry from Wardle, in my constituency, have been in touch with their own stories, including dogs panicking and at risk of heart attacks, horses running into barbed wire and causing themselves injury. The data shows that 41% of UK dog owners say that their dog is afraid of fireworks. That's 4 million dogs in the UK. And 35% more dogs go missing on bonfire night than any other night of the year, and 22% of cats too. Janet Goff from Littleborough wrote to me to say, they started in the middle of October, but it's every night. They're so loud, my dog is now a nervous, drooling wreck. I'm scared she'll have a heart attack or something. It's getting out of control now. Janet is absolutely right. It's out of control now. Now, I love a fireworks display like anyone else. They can be beautiful, they can be spectacular. And in Rochdale, we've got many displays that we're proud of. The bonfire night celebrations with fireworks in Concashore Common, in Littleborough Cricket Club, in Rilmer Cricket Club. Everyone enjoys them. And no one wants to be a killjoy. But for so many, the fireworks are not a matter of joy, they're a matter of fear. The use of fireworks has gone far beyond being enjoyed a couple of days a year. And many in my constituents have written to say they've heard fireworks every night throughout the months of autumn, and often far past the curfew. I have to say that the late night use doesn't just affect pet owners, but they affect shift workers, families with young children, families with children with special needs, with autism, and the elderly. And I have to say also that charities supporting veterans have raised repeatedly the awareness of the effect fireworks can have on those with PTSD, as has been said today. Research by Combat Stress and Help for Heroes found 74% of veterans want tighter restrictions on days and times when fireworks are used. Teresa Mitchell, the head of the Hidden Wounds Therapy Service for Veterans, said this: "Sudden loud noises, unpredictable flashes of light, the smell of bonfires and fireworks can trigger anxiety. Some people may feel on edge and overwhelmed. Others are reminded of moments in combat that can be troubled by past traumatic events." These former servicemen and women are not snowflakes. They're people who did their duty for this country, and they deserve to be treated with respect. Yeah. Almost a quarter of military veterans say fireworks have triggered a negative experience for them. There's our children who suffer too. 343 children needed specialist burns care between 2019 and 2023. That's specialist burns care in a hospital with a specialist consultant. That's separate from the thousands who are injured every year. Now, we should also not forget that the impact this has on our firefighters. The FBU says that every year that the consequences of fireworks with fires, injuries and the spread of fear has a direct impact on their members. And I quote the FBU saying, "It's our members who are put into dangerous situations trying to deal with the consequences of the current law." And now I've got full sympathy with the local law enforcement officers already short of resources trying to enforce the curfews and the current law. The problem is that loud fireworks can be bought by anyone wherever they like effectively and set off anywhere. But this ultimately is also a matter of respect. Respect for your neighbours. Most people who hold firework displays for weddings and birthdays, for example, probably aren't even aware of the distress they're causing, but they need to be made aware of that distress that they are causing. I'm also a cooperative and Labour MP, and it's worth pointing out the Co-op group decided years ago to impose a total ban on the sale of fireworks after work with animal charities. Other retailers should take note of that and take action before any change in the law. Fireworks are important recognised events throughout the calendar year, such as Bonfire Night, Diwali, Eid al-Fitr, New Year's Eve and Chinese New Year could all still be celebrated, as lots of people have said today, with lower noise levels, low noise and no bang fireworks. And knowing these specific events are upcoming gives pet owners time to prepare for the possibility of noise disruption. Fireworks should be often a way to bring people together. Sadly, they're bringing people apart at the moment. With tighter restrictions in place, we can do something. We can protect pets and wildlife and human beings too.
Thank you very much. If contributors could keep to the informal time limit, it would be a huge help, please. After Ruth Jones, I'm going to call Rachel Maskell and then Tom Hayes. Ruth Jones.
To serve under your chairship today, and I thank the Honourable Member for Keighley and Ilkley for bringing these important petitions today, because the sale and use of fireworks is of great concern to my constituents and is frequently one of the top issues in my postbag. Over the last year, I've received correspondence from residents right across the patch, from Newbridge, Blackwood, Abercarn, Kevin Forest, Risker, Rogerstone, Crumlin and even Baselig. Given this widespread concern, I'm not surprised that 700 residents in Newport West and Isloyn have signed the petitions up for debate today. These petitions have clear asks, reducing the maximum noise of consumer fireworks and limiting the sale of fireworks to licensed events. These changes are backed by 65% of the public, as well as a broad coalition of charities, and could easily be introduced by changes to regulations. Critically, something must be done to address the current lack of control facing local communities, as residents can report incidents to the local council, but they are powerless to do anything about it. Fireworks are an important part of many celebrations and enjoyed by millions across the UK each year. Overwhelmingly, this is at large organised displays, with 78% of the public never having bought fireworks. This is a startling figure and highlights the public's general preference for the safety of organised events. Despite this, residents are still too often exposed to surprise explosions late at night. These unexpected loud bangs startle children, distress older people, and frighten pets and livestock. Vulnerable groups, including children with sensory needs, older residents living alone, or those managing health conditions or trauma, are particularly affected. Sudden firework blasts can also be deeply distressing for many veterans. 93% of those living with PTSD said fireworks negatively impact them, with Help for Heroes finding that almost a quarter of veterans reported fireworks triggering negative experiences, including panic attacks. The Veterans Charity Combat Stress similarly regularly sees a 25% spike in helpline calls around Diwali and bonfire night. Loud fireworks are also a significant concern to pet owners and livestock farmers, with the unexpected explosions and flashes of bright light panicking animals into a desperate attempt to find safety. These instinctive reactions risk animals fleeing into traffic, injuring themselves or getting lost. And we've already heard that PetLog found that the number of missing dogs doubled between the 27th of October and the 10th of November in 2024. Appropriate restrictions on the use and sale of fireworks are essential to safeguarding animals' health and welfare. Further consideration is also required of the risks of household use of fireworks. Whilst organised displays often use trained professionals and adhere to rigorous health and safety requirements, such protections are not always in place for small events or family gatherings. 2025 saw a fourfold increase in firework-related burns to children and the highest admittance rate to A&E in a decade. 550 children were admitted in the 4 weeks around bonfire night. These are stark statistics which cannot be ignored. And Ms Jardine, I need to declare an interest here. As a previous physiotherapist working in a burns and plastic unit, I saw firsthand the difficulties, the disfigurement that these injuries cause long term. These children have to face a lifetime of impairment afterwards. I therefore call on the Minister to heed these clear concerns and overwhelming evidence supporting a change in approach. Ministers must update the 2004 firework regulations. And I look forward to the Minister outlining a clear timetable for the changes so desperately needed in her closing remarks. We can't be here again after November the 5th this year. Let's get it done now. Thank you.
Rachel Maskell.
Thank you, Ms. Shelby.
Pleasure
to see you in the chair. And I want to thank the 636 constituents of mine who signed the petitions we are debating this afternoon from York Central, and of course Guy Fawkes, hailed from my constituency. Indeed, in 1605, he came to this place to set this building alight and to use that antisocial behaviour, which is what we're talking about today, the harms, not the goods, that come from fireworks. There are two key areas that we are really talking about. The first, impact, and the second, safety. Now, the whiz, the crackles, and especially the bangs do have an impact on animals, people who are neurodiverse, with mental health challenges and with trauma. And I think we've heard so well made in today's debate the consequences of that. And therefore, putting in those restrictions to safeguard people's and animals' well-being is, of course, a logical step. On set dates, I would welcome that. And, of course, reducing the decibel volume of fireworks from 120 decibels to 90 decibels. And, of course, ensuring that only, and I would argue only, licensed public events should be putting on these displays to safeguard all of our communities. Having personally experienced a firework being lobbed at me when I was cycling home from this place one night, I certainly would argue that we need to ensure that they are just placed in the hands of people holding a licence. However, I want to turn to another event. New Year saw the tragedy at the Constellation Bar in the ski resort of Crans, Montana in Switzerland. 40 young people lost their lives, 100 were hospitalised, and it's a tragedy that demands a response from this place too. Over the weekend, I read the research from Professor Ed Gallia, who identified 38 similar fires, claiming about 1,200 lives since the year 2000. 15 of these events involving some form of pyrotechnics, and 13 involving the acoustic foam, which we saw in this case in Switzerland. It places new questions on the regulations in this place of using fireworks indoors. And of course, when we see a sparkler on a birthday cake, flambeing food, or indeed special effects at theatres, we see these as perfectly innocent occurrences. But the events of New Year's Day must cause us all to question whether or not our regulations are fit for purpose for the future. And while pressing on outdoor fireworks today in this debate, I think it's also important that we press on the use of indoor fireworks. Clearly, it just takes a spark to ignite a building and cause such tragedy. And therefore, with the Minister's considerations, I would also ask that she would look at the use of fireworks indoors. And perhaps it is time that we say a no to that, but also consider the consequences surrounding that and the wider safety that is needed around those indoor venues. Of course, exit routes have always been highlighted in these tragedies. The use of foam and cladding, of course, we remember debating so much in this place, and of course the human response to often people stopping to film these events rather than to respond, often freezing in the case of a fire as opposed to fleeing. And therefore we need to ensure that people have the right psychological plan when entering such venues. So in the wider considerations, and whilst of course we understand the impact of outdoor fireworks on our communities, I ask the Minister to now consider the impact of indoor fireworks and their use on our communities and the potential risks that that takes, and to review the regulations to ensure that we will never see a tragedy that experienced by the families, sadly, in Switzerland on New Year's Day. So will the Minister also look at indoor use of fireworks as well as those in public displays?
I'll call Josh Newbury. Tom Hayes.
Thank you, Ms Jardine. Nearly 2 hours into this debate, I'm pleased to have the chance to speak. I think the fact that we've had so many speeches shows just how much it matters to our constituents. I want to thank, first of all, the people who signed the 2 petitions in my constituency across both petitions. There were 497, showing just how much this matters to Bournemouth East. And in doing some preparation for speaking today, I was struck by what some of our colleagues have been saying today, that it feels like we've been debating this for a very long time. In fact, the first time Parliament, as far as I can tell, was debating fireworks legislation was 1697. And then looking at when the first regulations to support the public use of fireworks, that was the Gunpowder and Fireworks Act of 1860. I have to say, as somebody who can be frustrated by the pace of change in this Parliament, I was a bit concerned to see that it took just 56 calendar days to get that piece of legislation through from first reading in House of Commons through to Royal Assent. I think we might be able to learn something from our colleagues way back in history. Thinking about what my constituents have been telling me about fireworks in particular, I'm struck by Sandra in Muscliffe, who has described some of her evenings resembling like living in a war zone. I'm struck by speaking with Carl, who lives in Townsend, at my surgery appointment at Boscombe Library just the other week, who was telling me about his and his wife's cat Chester, who suffered significantly during noisy fireworks displays, to such an extent that Chester will have blood in his urine, which is a horrible thing to be hearing. Carl was asking what more could be done around the intensity and frequency of fireworks, and in so doing actually echoing an awful lot of views that I've heard from my constituents. I'm thinking too of Jeanette Shepherd, who lives in Folkestone, who was called on me to represent her to call for a limit in fireworks, particularly around the Bournemouth fireworks display that happens in Litterdown on an annual basis, which can have loud and unpredictable display occasions, not just on that evening, but actually in the days leading up. But there's also people on the other side of this argument, like Gail and Beaufort Road in Southbourne, who was very clear that she wants a live and let live approach, or James in Queen's Park, who says that his very, very beautiful dog Penny, and that's his words as well as mine, has never been bothered by fireworks. So I think what this says to us is we do need balance. We need to be finding a balance between safety and welfare on one side, but the ability of our constituents to enjoy coming together and having happy experiences. And let's face it, our country has been denied many of those opportunities to join together and a sense of hope and happiness for a long time. As an animal lover, I've been calling on the government to do more, and I've been calling on BCP Council in my own area to better regulate firework displays and, crucially, to enforce the existing rules more effectively. There's no point in bringing forward regulations if they're not enforced, and we should remember, have enforcement. It was the last Labour government that introduced the Fireworks Act of 2003 and the Fireworks Regulations Act of 2004, and this was about restricting the antisocial use of fireworks. It's been said today very well by a number of colleagues that we aren't against people being sociable. We aren't against the social use of fireworks. We're against the antisocial elements. We're against the excessive noise, the excessive duration of fireworks, the very significant intensity, the fact that we don't have reserved days in a year where fireworks are happening, but rather that they happen throughout the course of a year. And so for me, and I know for many of my colleagues, what we want to do is to recognise that when one person's actions causes harm or distress to others, and when individual freedoms come into conflict, we must always consider whether the balance is right on this and other issues. And when, in particular, it's not just owners of pets, but the beloved pets themselves who bear the consequence, I think all of us feel the very great need to be compassionate towards pets. But it's not just about pets, it is, as we've heard, also about veterans who are triggered as a consequence of hearing loud firework displays. It's about pensioners, it's about shift workers, it's about a spectrum in our society. And I'll close just by saying that were this government to move forward with a limitation on such things as the quality, the duration, the hours, the noise of firework displays, that would be very much in keeping with our new animal welfare strategy. And I think that one of the best things this government could do as part of the animal welfare strategy is to look at this again and to bring forward the legislation that will finally protect them and actually make sure that we've got more cohesive societies and a reduction in antisocial behaviour.
Yeah. Thank you. After Josh Newberry, I'll call Sarah Edwards and then Mark Sewards. Josh Newberry.
Thank you.
Sarah Edwards, isn't it?
As all honourable members here will know, throughout October and November, our inboxes and DMs fill up with messages from constituents sharing their concerns on the issue of fireworks and to what extent they should be controlled. So I welcome the chance to discuss this today. I'd like to thank hundreds of my Cannock Chase constituents and thousands of people across the country who lit the fuse on these two petitions. These include pet owners, parents, farmers, veterans, people with disabilities. They're all asking a very simple question. Why, when the harms caused by fireworks are so well evidenced, do we continue to allow their widespread sale with few meaningful restrictions? Now, my experience of this issue is perhaps different to many people who would pose that question, because growing up I enjoyed many professional displays at council-run bonfire nights, and I married into a family that considers a small fireworks display in the back garden to be a closely guarded New Year's Eve tradition. I don't have any pets, and my two children are about as heavy sleepers as it's possible to be. But, Ms Jardine, I'm also an animal welfare advocate, so I very much understand those concerns. The Kennel Club has reported an 81% increase in dogs going missing during periods when fireworks are used. Animal rescue centres continue to document animals fleeing in panic, and farmers talk of miscarriages and even deaths amongst livestock. And we know that wildlife disruption too is very significant. We have to also acknowledge, as we've heard, the impact on people. Parents of children with special educational needs and disabilities have told me how distressing it can be when fireworks are set off late at night, especially without warning, how difficult it can be to calm a child in sensory overload, and the effects that can be felt for days and days afterwards. For many veterans and survivors of trauma living with PTSD, fireworks season means the exact opposite of celebration. I know the organisation Combat Stress have extensive research on how sudden bangs, flashes, whistles, smokes and smells can replicate the sights and sounds of warfare. It's telling that polling shows 74% of veterans support further restrictions on when fireworks can be set off. And I think if we had concrete nationwide statistics on the amount of time and money our police and firefighters spend dealing with accidental and criminal fireworks related incidents, that would also add strength to the arguments for action on this issue. And it must be said that most people use fireworks responsibly, and there are restrictions on what you can buy and who can buy. And yet, the fact that we hear these same concerns raised consistently year after year tells us, I think, that doing nothing is no longer an option. Members of the public can buy fireworks as loud as 120 decibels, roughly the equivalent to a jet engine taking off. As anyone who's been a councillor will know, noise limits are difficult to enforce unless the disruption is repeated, and with sales increasingly happening online, information and advice is more and more difficult to give. Having once been confined to a few days of the year, many of my constituents have noted, as we've heard around the chamber, that fireworks season is getting longer and longer every year. That's why I agree with calls to limit private fireworks sales and use to specific periods of the year, and I also wholeheartedly support one of the E-petition's calls for a 90 decibel limit on fireworks sales. Petitions we're debating reflect a shift in public opinion. People aren't calling for the end of celebration, they're calling for a more balanced approach. Before I conclude, I'd like to acknowledge the work of my honourable friend, the member for Luton North, who, as we've heard, has introduced a fireworks bill which I think makes sensible, proportionate proposals. I welcome the fact that ministers are listening and reviewing the evidence from animal welfare organisations, veterans, charities, parents, local authorities and the public, which I believe is clear. So my ask of the government is this: commit to meaningful reform. We should reduce permitted noise levels, tackle the ballooning length of fireworks season and tighten controls on sales. Our understanding of animal welfare has evolved. Our awareness of trauma and neurodiversity has grown. Technology has moved on and public expectations have changed. It is entirely reasonable and in fact necessary for the law to evolve too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jardine. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. I love watching fireworks, whether it's at East Ardsley Cricket Club or Morley Rugby Club for bonfire night, or at Gildersham and Driglington Christmas lights switch-on events. I think they're spectacular, certainly when part of an organised display. My son Arthur, who's a year old now, absolutely loved the ones in Gildersham last year, and I'm absolutely certain he would have said thank you to the parish council if he were able. In the past, I've also tuned in on TV to watch the fireworks in London on New Year's Eve, but these days I typically just watch them all go off in unison across Leeds from Wortley. So I want to be clear that I approach this debate as somebody who enjoys fireworks as much as anybody else. But for a long time now, it's become clear that something isn't right here. My constituents have been contacting me in great numbers to state that both the volume and the frequency of firework use has been increasing, and it's having a much more negative impact on their lives than it used to. Their freedom to live their lives in peace is being restricted at certain times of the year. And it's not just the big events. It's actually the weeks and the months of fireworks before and after these events that are driving people to contact me. Fireworks being set off every week and every day for a whole week straight from the same location. Loud explosions every night for days on end. People with PTSD, those with special educational needs, those with pets and animals, constantly having to mitigate the impact of fireworks on their lives. The freedom to buy and use these fireworks needs to be balanced against the freedom to live our lives in peace. And it affects people in different ways. One of my constituents, Gareth, has been diagnosed with autism. He told me that fireworks give him sleepless nights and put him in a state of high alert, especially when he can't plan for when they're going to be set off. And in another area, we've heard repeatedly from members across the chamber today, Combat Stress, the charity, say that 74% of veterans surveyed want to see restrictions on when these fireworks can be set off. Now, I've been speaking with a veteran in Leeds South West and Morley, a person who served our country with great distinction, and I'd like to share their words with you now. November arrives, and I have to adapt my routine to make sure I've always got my headphones in my pocket. Otherwise, I'll be taken straight back to being on tour, experiencing feelings and emotions that I'd rather never encounter again. Fireworks trigger the memories, the sounds, the gunfire. Scenes replay over and over with every firework. The smell comes back, the noise, the image, the grief. While I understand the joy that fireworks bring some and the heritage and the history of our country that we should hold on to, I fail to see why they need to be so loud. I am greatly in favour of planned firework displays so I know what time they're going off and I can plan ahead and be ready with my headphones. I would urge a reduction in the maximum noise allowed and the sale only to be used for organised displays. Now, I have received so much feedback, Ms Jardine, in response to the debate today, but I wanted to share those words as it gets to the heart of the argument that's been made. So at this point, I'd like to ask the Minister, does the government have any plans to reduce the noise that fireworks make? In addition to that, does the government plan to go any further and restrict the sale of fireworks entirely so that only those using them as part of organised professional displays are able to get their hands on them? My constituents have also asked me to raise the enforcement of existing laws too. What can the government do to ensure that no fireworks are set off between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m, which is currently the law for every night of the year except key holidays? And what will the government do to crack down on those who sell fireworks illegally, because we know it's happening? But of course, even if the current legislation was enforced, the persistent issues with frequency and volume will endure. So my asks today are very straightforward. At a minimum, let's turn down the volume on fireworks sold to the public and let's enforce existing laws. Beyond that, I do think the government should seriously consider the merits of going further and restricting their sale for professional displays only. But we should all do our bit to support our veterans and our vulnerable constituents. Let's continue to enjoy the wonderful firework displays at key times of the year. I know I certainly will. Let's readjust the scales and let's get the balance right between those freedoms, because the freedom to enjoy fireworks must be carefully balanced against the freedom to live our lives in peace. Thank you.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson, Sarah Olney.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. It's a real pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And you weren't here at the beginning of the debate, so you will have missed. This was the most crowded Westminster Hall debate I think I've ever been in. It's a bit of a blast from the past seeing Labour members on this side of the hall, which we haven't seen for a while. I have to say it's the first time I've been pleased to have a reserved seat, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to participate at all. So in that spirit, may I particularly congratulate the member for Keighley and Ilkley, who made a really, really good opening speech, and I'm very, very pleased to be responding on behalf of the Liberal Democrats on this debate, because there's no doubt about the strength of feeling out there in the country when you see the number of people who signed this particular petition, including in my own constituency of Richmond Park. There was 217, but that's a comparatively small number compared to some of the other numbers that we've heard about today. And the very fact that we had so many MPs and members in this debate today, I think really shows the extent to which Parliament wants to see some movement on this issue. And I'm really, really grateful to all members who contributed for sharing the stories of their constituents. I was particularly moved by my honourable friend, the member for Epsom and Newell, talking about her own experiences as a veteran, and it really brought home to me that the impact of those suffering from PTSD, the impact that fireworks can have on them. And many other members and honourable members have talked about people suffering from conditions like autism and ADHD, the impact that fireworks displays can have on shift workers. And I can speak from my own experience back when I was a parent of young children, how terrifying it was for them and how difficult it was for them to sleep when the fireworks displays went on late into the night. I'm particularly grateful to my honourable friend for Glastonbury and Somerton, who gave a really, really detailed description of the impact on livestock and farm animals. I certainly learned a great deal there. It's not a common experience in my personal inbox where we have, but we do speak a lot in Richmond Park about the impact on pets. And it was interesting to hear my honourable friend for Winchester talk about his experience as a vet, and how no vets want to be on duty on November the 5th because they know that it's going to be a very, very traumatic night. In a similar vein, my honourable friend for Torbay talked about the impact on zoos, Paignton Zoo in his constituency, and I can only imagine how incredibly difficult it must be to manage the animals in the zoo on nights when there are lots of fireworks around. And again, my honourable friend for Taunton and Wellington talked about the actual physical dangers of fireworks and his very graphic description of how dumped fireworks are, just an enormous fire hazard. So it was really, enlightening to, if that's maybe not a great word to use, but very interesting to hear everybody's reflections on those different aspects of this particular debate. Because, of course, fireworks are a sign of celebration. We typically associate them in this country with Guy Fawkes Night, but actually increasingly in my constituency, and I'm sure many other London constituencies, they're let off during Diwali, and actually I tend to hear more on New Year's Eve now than I do on November the 5th. And so they are increasing in the occasions when people let off fireworks are increasing in frequency. And like many members who've contributed to this debate, we certainly we in the Liberal Democrats do not want to limit people's enjoyment of fireworks. They still remain a spectacular sight and perhaps one of the best expressions of celebration that we have. But there is no doubt that the impact of fireworks can be incredibly harmful. There are... Yes, bit to give way.
She was talking about some of the amazing firework displays that we have across the country, but of course there's some fantastic alternatives to fireworks, like demonstrations using drones and light shows. But does she agree with me that we should also be implementing a noise limit on fireworks below 90 decibels for those that want to use noise fireworks, because that would make a significant difference to ensure ensure people and animals in communities feel safe.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for that intervention. She mentions drones. I know that they can also provide really, really spectacular sound and light shows. I would be slightly nervous about endorsing the use of drones instead of fireworks. Richmond Park has some of the most contested airspace of anywhere in the country, and we are very, very used to the impact of noise from aircraft in my constituency, and I certainly don't want to add drones necessarily to the congestion in the skies over our heads. But I think I will come to this shortly, but my honourable friend is exactly right about the needing to strike a balance between the enjoyment that fireworks can give and the impact that they create, not just for people but also for animals. So fireworks are explosives and can be dangerous, so there are strict rules currently in place regulating their sale, possession and use. And that includes essential safety provisions, conformity to the relevant tests and correct application of kite marks. The 2015 regulations categorise fireworks according to their net explosive content, discharge safety distances, noise level. Category F1 fireworks present a low hazard and are intended for use in confined areas, although they must not be sold to anyone under the age of 16, where the categories F2 and F3 are a low to medium hazard intended for outdoor use, and category F4 are a high hazard and can only be supplied to persons with specialist knowledge. So there already exists a range of regulations, although I think the member for Keighley and Ilkley made an important point when he said that those regulations, it's hard to enforce them until after the firework has been exploded, by which time it obviously will be too late in terms of the impact that have.
Should you keep on that point?
Yes, of course.
Thank you, Chair. The safe distance for category F3 fireworks, you just explained the category system, is 25 metres. Yet at the point of sale, no questions are asked about where these things are going to be ignited. Very few people in Edinburgh South West have 25 metres of space to let off a firework in their garden.
Certainly not in London, I can confirm. No, the honourable member is absolutely right, and I think that is why we would be looking for the regulations exist in terms of sale of fireworks, and I think I'd be interested to hear from the Minister whether she thinks more can be done to enforce the existing regulations in the way that the honourable member suggests, or whether what we actually need to do is to look at a wholesale change of regulations for sale to address some of these issues that members have raised. However, as I previously mentioned, I represent a constituency that is much blighted by aircraft noise, and we know as well as anybody the impact that regular ongoing noise, particularly late at night and early in the morning, can have on residents' health, their ability to sleep, their ability, and particularly on young children. And so I just wanted to close by saying that I think the calls that have been made by almost every member here for a limit on the decibel level, reducing it from 120 to 90, such that whatever fireworks are sold, whatever use they are intended for, whichever celebration they are intended to mark, if we can reduce the decibel, that will strike the right balance between our human need for celebration, but also our need for sleep and for peace of mind. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Yeah. Opposition spokesperson, Dame Harriet Baldwin.
Thank you very much, Ms Jardine. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship this afternoon, and I want to start by saying how grateful I am to Robert and to Helen, the two petitioners who, if you'll forgive the phrase, lit the fuse for this petition to get up to the numbers that it had and to enable us to have this debate today. And I also commend my honourable friend, the member for Keighley and Ilkley, who so eloquently set out the reasons that we need to have this debate and what the issues are that have been so ably put by so many representatives in this debate this afternoon. It's not the first time that this House has discussed whether additional restrictions on the use of fireworks are necessary, but with more than 370,000 signatures, including 632 on the two petitions from West Worcestershire, it's absolutely clear that the public want a system that better protects people, animals and communities from the misuse of fireworks. I think we heard from almost everyone who spoke that fireworks bring joy to so many, and we should shout out to the very many responsible groups that exist up and down this country who are committed to the safe display and enjoyment of fireworks. Often they raise money for good local causes. But as we heard so often in today's debate, we cannot ignore the very real problems, the dangerous misuse, the antisocial behaviour and the distress that's caused to pets, livestock, wildlife and so many vulnerable people. So I welcome the government's engagement with stakeholders and their campaign encouraging responsible use and for low decibel displays. I think we heard in all the contributions today that we are a nation of animal lovers, and we are also a nation that wants to continue to enjoy fireworks displays. But we also heard loud and clear in all the contributions that no action is not the answer here, and the government will need to listen to all the points that have been made. Now, we heard from across the land. We heard from South West Hertfordshire, Dewsbury and Batley, Glastonbury and Somerton, Taunton and Wellington, Morecambe and Lunesdale, Luton North, Scarborough and Whitby, Broxtowe, North West Leicestershire, Edinburgh South West, Warrington South, Bathgate and Linlithgow, Hayward and Middleton, Shipley, Ellesmere Port, obviously Richmond Park, Glasgow West, Hartlepool, Aylesbury, Stourbridge, Rochdale, Newport West, Bournemouth East, Cannock Chase&, Morley and York. And I think every person here this afternoon really represented so eloquently the concerns of the members in their constituency, the people who have written to them, the people who have expressed real concerns. And we recognise that this is already a heavily regulated area, but in many of the contributions we highlighted gaps in enforcement, the weak penalties that exist for illegal sales, the problems with stockpiling, the devastating consequences to both property and with burns when things go wrong. The issue of enforcement for the age limits on purchases, which many believe are no longer appropriate, was also shown to be not properly enforced. So I think there's clear need for a proper evidence-led review of the regulations. If reforms are proportionate and grounded in that evidence, I suspect that they will attract unanimous support across this House. And from the point of view of my party and many members in this debate, we think that although a ban on fireworks should not be a first resort, it should not be taken off the table as a last resort. Because through these petitions, the public have spoken loudly. Through their representatives in Parliament, people have spoken loudly. Parliament has raised these issues repeatedly. Communities want action. Clearly, the existing regulations are not doing what society wants them to do. So I'm keen to hear from the Minister about her plans to respond.
Minister Dearden.
Thank you, Mrs Jardine. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for Keighley and Ilkley for leading today's important debate, which is based on two petitions. One calling for the reduction in the noise limit for consumer fireworks from 120 decibels to 90, and another asking for limiting the sales of fireworks to local authority approved displays only. I only have just over 10 minutes to respond, so I might not be able to take as many interventions as the Honourable Member at the beginning, but I would like to thank the Shadow Minister for putting on record her thanks for everyone and in their constituencies who've spoken today. I've shaved a good minute off my speech and thank her for that contribution. But I do want to thank all members for their brilliant contributions and a really interesting debate this afternoon. I agree it's one of sort of the longest and most well-attended that I've been to since I was appointed to this role, but when I reflect on my time since I was elected to, and that does absolutely show the strength of feeling across all sides of this House, and I thank members for it in the Westminster Hall debate this afternoon. Representing many of your constituents and constituencies like mine too, I'm regularly contacted by residents who have been impacted by the antisocial use of fireworks, and I thank members, my constituents, for continuing to raise this matter with me and can assure them and colleagues here, campaigners and those in the gallery too that have been with us throughout this afternoon's debate that I do recognise the challenges that our communities face and those direct personal experience that colleagues and constituents have experienced and shared with us as well. I'd firstly like to acknowledge the important work of Helen Whiteleg from Red Wings Horse Sanctuary for beginning this petition as part of her organisation's work to safeguard horses and advocate for their welfare. And I'd also like to thank Robert Branch for beginning his petition. I know that animal welfare charities like Red Wings and my local RSPA branch in Halifax have been calling for a reduction in fireworks decibel levels for some time, and that strength of feeling amongst the public on this issue is clear to see from the number of signatures that lots of members have alluded to today that both of those petitions have received. If I could also, Chair, pay tribute to the family of Josephine Smith, who sadly passed away in October 2021 after a firework was placed through her letterbox. And I'd like to express my condolences to Josephine's family, and I'm very grateful to her son Alan, who I met with earlier today, for his continued advocacy on this matter. I'd also like to thank my honourable friends, the member for Luton North, for her dedicated campaigning and advocacy on this, and the member for Bolton South and Walkden on their recent private members' bills on fireworks misuse and on fireworks noise control. I'd also like to thank my honourable friends, the member for Bradford South and the member for Leeds North West, for their advocacy and engagement with me since my appointment. I know how important tackling antisocial firework use is to them and to their constituents. And I also want to take a moment to express my gratitude to the emergency services, our firefighters, paramedics and police officers who work tirelessly to keep our community safe during the fireworks season. Yeah. As we've heard from members today, this time of year and the past couple of months can be particularly challenging for pets, veterans, communities, those with PTSD, mental health conditions, autism and those who are vulnerable. And members today have raised many important issues and ideas to consider: restricting the days per year, control zones, volume and evening hours, date restrictions for purchase, sale and types, to advance notice of firework use and promoting that practice further, to the ban on indoor fireworks. And on that note, I want to respond to my honourable friends for York Central. And I was, of course, so saddened to hear about the tragic fire that claimed 40 lives at New Year in Switzerland. My condolences, of course, to all the family and friends who lost their lives in that devastating event. I understand the investigation into the causes of the fire is ongoing, and it's been reported that the authorities have banned the use of indoor pyrotechnics that the honourable member mentioned. And in addition to the support demonstrated here today on the topics of the e-petitions on noise level and limiting the sale of fireworks to organised displays, that strength of feeling has absolutely been heard and recognised today, and I thank members for all of their contributions. My aim is to ensure that and to minimise the negative impact of fireworks, ensuring that they are used responsibly and continue to play a role in celebrations and festivities across our country. There is no doubt that fireworks are a popular feature in community and family events and bring people together, and lots of members have brought those examples to the floor today, from bonfire night and New Year to birthdays, Eid and Diwali, amongst many others. And whilst many of our constituents enjoy using fireworks, around 77%, only 15% do believe that the existing regulatory framework is sufficient. And that's the research from the Social Market Foundation that found one solution would be to reduce the noise limit for consumer fireworks. And that, of course, is one of the subjects of today's debate. The research also highlighted the potential for alternative kinds of light displays, like using drones or lasers. And the recent New Year's Eve fireworks display in London showcased an alternative, pairing fireworks with hologauze technology, and that highly reflective silver-coated gauze reflects projected images while remaining transparent, allowing viewers to see fireworks behind the visuals. And this and the use of drones show how technology is changing our experience of the traditional fireworks season and offering a more sustainable, visually rich alternative for large-scale events. And we do, of course, encourage attendance at those organised public displays. Just to touch on the current legislation and the safer use, and then to build into and respond to colleagues' points. As members will know, as explosive, the sale and use of fireworks is extensively regulated, with controls placed on their import, storage, supply, possession and use. In Great Britain, the fireworks regulations of 2004 introduced that package of measures to reduce the nuisance and injuries caused by the misuse of fireworks. Lots of colleagues have referenced the curfew, the 11 p.m. to 7 p.m. curfew for the use of fireworks, with the use later in the night to 1 a.m. that's permitted for only the traditional firework days that I've already mentioned. And I'm grateful that many councils, including Calderdale Council, from my constituency, have hard-working community safety teams in place to collect that intelligence and allocate enforcement officers to hotspots of antisocial usage. The Pyrotechnic Articles Regulation Act 2015 also contains those provisions around the manufacture, import and distribution of pyrotechnics across the UK, including that labelling and conformity assessment testing and other requirements to ensure the product's safety. That Act also sets out the requirement for manufacturers to ensure that their products don't exceed that 120 decibel noise limit. But my honourable friends, yes.
Robin, the Minister need not panic because we have this room until 7:30, so there's plenty of time for the Minister to carry on speaking and take interventions. But the Minister's kindly outlining the legislation that currently sits in place, but actually it's not working. We know that there is a threshold of 11 p.m. on most of the night evenings, but I, like across Keighley, Silsden, the Worth Valley, have got constituents that fireworks are going off all throughout the night and all throughout the year. Could the Minister just explain if, on the back of the petitions that have been submitted today, what action the government will be taking in response?
The honourable member for his intervention and for the reassurance of time. And I will touch on the enforcement side of things. I absolutely recognise, lots of colleagues have mentioned sort of the existing framework and regulations are in place, the need for enforcement, and of course the consideration of further legislation and regulations in relation to the e-petitions that I'll get to when I focus on antisocial behaviour and lots of the comments that colleagues have mentioned today and the considerations that we are taking as a department. My honourable friends will be aware that retailers storing those fireworks must be, of course, licensed to do so and are only able to sell them to consumers for that limited period around seasonal celebrations. And retailers who wish to sell fireworks to the public outside of those periods must obtain an additional selling licence from their local licensing authority. The brilliant local trading standards and fire and rescue authorities in metropolitan counties like in West Yorkshire can take action against those storing or selling fireworks without an appropriate licence. And they work really closely with retailers to ensure that fireworks sold are safe, and they have the powers to enforce against those who place non-compliant fireworks on the market. I'm grateful to have met with the Calderdale District Fire Service to understand the role that they play in reducing risk and engaging with my local community, and as a Minister will continue to engage with colleagues, stakeholders and organisations on a national level too, to ensure that this Labour Government continues to work with the Health and Safety Executive, local authorities, including Border Force and trading standards, to take action against anyone who imports or sells fireworks illegally in the UK. And that enforcement is so important in providing those resources for them to do their jobs. Many colleagues have mentioned that amongst those most impacted by the illegal and antisocial use of fireworks are our pets and our veteran community, and colleagues have mentioned some real personal examples here today, and I know that my own Labrador, Bruno, is one of many dogs that have been deeply impacted by fireworks in recent months. Since October, I've been contacted by hundreds of colleagues across this House, charities and campaigners, more than 100 of my own constituents who've shared their experiences, including one having to move away from their home during peak firework periods to protect their family pet. And it's that engagement as constituency MP, colleague stories here today, that's driving my work as the Minister to minimise the negative impacts of fireworks. And following my appointment, building on the brilliant work of my predecessor for Ellesmere, my honourable friend for Ellesmere Port and Bromber, and the lots of work that he did in the department engaging with groups, organisations, charities, businesses to gather that evidence on the year-round impact of fireworks that we've heard of today is what I've been continuing to do. Continue that engagement with a wide range of consumer groups and charities, as well as meeting with members here, and I thank members for that from the other place and devolved governments. And I've recently met with the Scottish Government to understand their recent implications, policies, and to build that evidence base that we can consider the effectiveness of further legislation that may have an impact in reducing the antisocial and illegal firework usage. And I will continue to build on. Yes, of course.
I just wonder, I mean, we've heard she's explained to us what's happened in the past, what's happening now. We're interested in the future. We need legislation and we need it before November the 5th this year. So can I press her and ask her for a timeline on what is going to happen next?
I thank my honourable friend for her intervention and for her speech, and it was a powerful one, and I understand and hear her urgency for action and colleagues' reflections on being here this time last year in Westminster Hall debating fireworks. Whilst I'm not able to provide a timeline at this stage, I would of course be happy to work with her and colleagues all across this House on next steps, and we progress as a department, building on that work, building that evidence base of my predecessor, working with our devolved governments and administrations to understand the work they're undertaking and the evidence base, but also those examples across the globe too, those countries that are taking action, and to understand first and foremost how we can safeguard our communities, and safety is the absolute paramount of that. One of my first acts as a minister was to launch that public campaign during fireworks season, promoting their considerate use and focus on safe use, including on disposal too. And I know colleagues have mentioned that, that we can really encourage that responsible behaviour and safer celebrations at private displays. We've also published new guidance. Yes.
Scott Arthur.
Thank you, and I do thank her for giving way. It'd be good to see the evaluation of that campaign which you launched. And I do thank you for running that campaign. But it seems the government accepts there's impacts on pets, on veterans, and the government thanks the emergency services for all they do and the risks they take that evening. But all those people, those pet owners, the veterans, the emergency services, and I expect even the Minister must be a little bit frustrated that there's no timeline for even the start of some action. Does the Minister share that frustration?
I thank my honourable friend for his intervention. I am working at pace with my colleagues in the department, building this evidence base, speaking to as many people as possible, understanding the frustrations, but also those real-life stories that colleagues have shared today in this House and continue to do since I was appointed into this role, but my own constituents too, as he will have heard. And in terms of the impact of the campaign, yes.
Way, but just in terms of interaction, could I ask the Minister what discussion has she had with DEFRA ministers to do with the animal welfare strategy that has been launched? Because upon reading that strategy, it doesn't really address the issues of fireworks. And given that there's been so many issues raised to do with animal welfare concerns, what conversations is she having with DEFRA colleagues?
Minister Dearden.
I thank the honourable member for his intervention and thank him for raising particularly animal welfare. It's come up time and time again in this debate. I'm really proud of the strategy that we launched as a government and work with my colleagues across departments on a range of issues in my brief. And of course it's an offence to cause any unnecessary suffering to any domestic animal under sort of the Animal Welfare Act of 2006. But I understand and hear his reflections and colleagues on all sides of the House today in terms of the strategy itself and perhaps where we might be able to go further. So we'll continue to engage with colleagues on that. Just before I move on to the next point, my honourable friend mentioned the impact of the campaign with the total reach of, I think it was around 130,000. So there's always, of course, more we can do. And I thank colleagues who shared those social media posts with their constituents and the guidance that we provided. But I'm really keen that we always continue to build on that sort of regulation aside. So as we continue to promote and push to promote safe and responsible usage, I will continue to work with national charities such as Combat Stress, the RSPCA, the Fireworks Impact Coalition and Help for Heroes and so many more to ensure that our messaging reaches the general public. Whilst the majority of people who use fireworks do so appropriately and have a sensible and responsible attitude towards them, many colleagues have raised today those minorities of people who use fireworks in a dangerous, inconsiderate and anti-social manner. And we've heard some horrendous stories today of highlighting those examples of that. And I absolutely understand the impact that inconsiderate and antisocial use can have. Loud bangs that are disturbing communities, particularly those with elderly residents, young children and pets. And in far too many places, fireworks are set off late at night, disturbing hard-working parents, waking up children and causing terror to our most vulnerable constituents. Dangerous misuse is a serious concern. Reports of fireworks being thrown at people, colleagues have mentioned at prams, vehicles or buildings are completely unacceptable and will continue to support the work of our council officers and PCSOs that work tirelessly to ensure that the vast majority of those who use fireworks for celebration.
Would the Minister give way on that point?
Of course.
I thank the Minister for giving way on that point. And as we have heard throughout this debate, quite often this falls between the response of the police post 11 o'clock, which they will not understandably come out unless there's a threat to life, especially with scarce resources, and then also the council, which will treat it as a noise pollution issue, neither of which are suitable for dealing with nuisance fireworks. Luton Council has developed, with Love Clean Streets, the ability to report firework misuse through an app, yet I know that councils up and down the country are unable to get this off the road, and we really need to be able to see that councils and communities are better resourced to be able to report the issues of nuisance fireworks.
I thank my honourable friend for her intervention, and I agree with her, and that best practice of the work in Luton is really appreciated and valued, and where we can share that and promote that best practice, people can better report outside of those hours. And she made an absolutely valid point around the frustrations and difficulties in doing that, and the enforcement side of things. We'd be absolutely really keen to take that further. Tackling antisocial behaviour is an absolute top priority for this government, a key part of our Safer Streets mission, which is why we want to take action against those who seek chaos and terror on our streets. And members, of course.
During my contribution, I spoke about the people from my community of Blackburn and the contribution that they made in changing what was going on in their community. Can the Minister reassure me that the government will engage directly with communities to hear from the very people whose lives are blighted by this antisocial behaviour?
I thank my honourable friend for her intervention, and I can absolutely provide that reassurance here today. I want to hear from as many people and communities that have been impacted and ensure that they have the opportunity to share their stories directly with me. So I thank her for raising it today and can give her that reassurance. Yes.
Exceptionally generous with her time. I mean, the reality is this time next year we're going to be back here because there'll be another petition calling for the same things again. So I wonder what guarantees the Minister can give in terms of what progress will be made between now and this time next year in terms of the asks that the petitioners have made. So in terms of decibel levels and the licensing regime, what progress will have been made? Fast forward the clock to when we're having this debate this time next year.
I thank the honourable member for his intervention. I'm always happy to meet with the leads of this petition, but also with campaigners, colleagues in this House, to update and sort of provide that opportunity for them to have the direct feedback to myself in the department and not have to wait for another Westminster Hall debate if there is one. So I'm really happy to provide that clarification, but also availability of myself today to ensure that this issue remains and will continue to be a key priority for me in the department to hear from colleagues on, as we really recognise and have heard today just the urgency, but also the passion that colleagues have brought in their desire to see change. And if I, on that note, could reiterate my thanks to the member for Keighley and Ilkley, to Helen and to Robert for their work to bring this debate to the House, and thank members for their contributions, and really want to assure members and advocacy groups that I've heard your concerns and asked for better regulation and urgency for action, and will seriously continue to consider them as I look to further mitigate the negative impact that illegal and antisocial firework use can have on our communities. And as we continue to gather that evidence and continue to hear from organisations, charities, campaigners, to ensure that any changes to legislation is effective. But whilst I recognise the vital cultural importance of fireworks at a diverse range of festivals and celebrations, I want to apologise for continuing to support our emergency services working to promote those safe usage, raise awareness of the risks and take action against those minority of individuals that use fireworks illegally and anti-socially at the expense of their communities. The safety of the public, impact on people, animals and property will be central in decisions and how we proceed in relation to the regulation of fireworks. And I want to thank everybody for their contributions today. Again, to my honourable member for bringing this debate, to the campaigners in the gallery for their patience and listening, to all colleagues across this House, and to ensure that we continue to work really closely together. And I thank all members for their contributions. Thank you, Chair.
Robbie Moore to wind up.
Thank you, Mrs Jardine, and it has been a thought-provoking debate, and we've heard from members from across the House, and there's very few petitions debates that take place where the whole chamber is full. So can I use this opportunity to once again thank Helen Whiteleg and Robert Branch for bringing forward these two really good petitions that enabled us all to discuss, signed by 376,000 signatures. And also I'd like to thank all of those charities that have continuously engaged with members from across the House. And I'd also like to use the opportunity to thank the Honourable Member for Luton North for the work that she has done consistently over the period of time that I've been lucky enough to be a Member of Parliament in terms of raising this really important issue. We know the impacts it has on our animals, our pets, our livestock, veterans, those with anxiety issues, our elderly and our children, and hard-working people who just want to get a decent night's sleep. But this is a constant issue which continuously comes back to this place year after year throughout every single opportunity that we get to raise this in the House. And I think the points that the member for York Central made to do with indoor fireworks is absolutely noted, and dare I say will control the nature of the debate going forward. But I just want to end on a point by saying to the Minister, and maybe reiterate some of the points that the Honourable Member for Ellesmere Port made as well, that time is of the essence. And I have a lot of respect for my neighbour, the Minister, who represents a constituency literally next door to me, that I'm sure gets the similar types of correspondence coming into her inbox, that the speech that the Minister delivered just felt a little bit like it was brought off the shelf, dusted off from ministers that have come and gone in the past. And I say that with the greatest of respect to even Conservative ministers that have delivered the same type of speech. I am getting, and I'm sure many in this House are getting very frustrated that this is an issue that keeps coming back time and time again. We've had no outline in terms of timeframes from the Minister, and we've had no outline in terms of strategy going forward. And is this really the government's ambition to bring forward a strategy that deals with licensing and which deals with reducing the noise that fireworks are going to be brought out? I sincerely hope, on behalf of the 376,000 petitioners that have signed this, that there will be some sort of a positive announcement from the government, more than just warm words, which is what I feel that we've heard from the Minister today. And I say that with the most respect to the Minister, who I know and who has been kind enough to reach out and speak to me many times on this issue. On that, I'd like to thank, on behalf of the Petitions Committee.
The question is that this House has considered E-petitions 738192 and 732559 relating to the sale of fireworks. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, noes. I think the ayes have it. Order. The sitting stands adjourned.